We're going to call the Washoe County Planning Commission for December 6th to order. Can we have a determination of quorum, please?
Yes. Okay, we'll go ahead and do roll call. Sarah Savilicek,
Here.
Michael Flick,
You.
Michael Flick,
Here.
Daniel Lazareski,
Here.
Kate Nelson,
Here.
Rob Pierce,
Here.
Patricia Phillips,
Here.
and Francine Donchik is absent. We have a quorum.
We have a quorum, yes. Commissioner Lazaruk, would you lead us in a pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. May we have the ethics and law announcement, please?
Gustafson for the record. Commissioners are reminded that if with respect to any matter or any person coming before the commission today, number one, you've received a gift or loan. Number two, you have a pecuniary interest. Number three, you have a commitment in a private capacity, such as a family, employment, business, or similar relationship. Or number four, if you've provided representation or counseling before an agency to a person or entity for compensation within the last year on a matter that's being considered here today, please remember to disclose that gift, loan, interest, commitment, or prior representation at the time the matter is being considered. And furthermore, please abstain from deliberation or voting on the matter if it's clear that the gift, loan, interest, commitment, or prior representation would materially affect the independence of judgment of a reasonable person. Commissioners are also reminded that under the Planning Commission rules, if you've had any contact outside this meeting with any persons interested in a matter coming before the commission today, please disclose the nature of that contact at this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Appeal procedure?
Yeah, most decisions rendered by the Planning Commission are appealable to the Board of County Commissioners. If you disagree with the decision of the Planning Commission and you qualify as an aggrieved person or party, you may appeal in writing within 10 calendar days from the date that the decision being appealed is reduced to writing, filed with the Secretary of the Planning Commission, and mailed to the original applicant in the proceeding being appealed in accordance with Washoe County Code. Please call the planning staff immediately at 328-6100 for information on the appeal procedure and the application fee.
Thank you. We're at item 5, public comment. Just remind the public this item is heard under this item will be limited to 3 minutes per person and may pertain to matters both on and off the agenda. However, action may not be taken at any matter raised under public comment period until a matter is specifically listed on an agenda as an action item. Comments are to be made to the Planning Commission as a whole.
In chambers, I have Michael Clark, followed by Cliff Lowe.
Good evening. Michael Clark, Washoe County Commissioner-elect, District 2. And I've got a comment that I'd like to share with you, and I know it's not in your realm, but when we hold a public meeting, it should be for the public. As I go around the complex here, the gates are locked. Some gates are open, but most of the gates are locked. I had to badge myself in to get into the complex, and I had to let somebody in the door over here. So when we hold a public meeting in the evening, the county should be aware that to notify security to not lock the gates early. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Cliff Lowe. If you could please state your first and last name for the record.
For the record, my name is Cliff Lowe, and I'm a resident of unincorporated Washoe County. It's one of the rare times I've been before the Planning Commission, and I want to start out, first of all, by thanking you. Even though I may disagree with some things that you may do, I thank you for choosing to do the job that you're doing and sticking with the job in the current environment. I know it's probably something that I could not do myself. So in the hostile, uncivil environment in which you are operating, I thank you for staying with it. Having said that, I'm here tonight and will speak again under item 9A regarding changes to development code. I'm here to urge you not to approve those changes. I'll leave it to others to perhaps to talk about substantive reasons, but I'm urging you not to approve it because it is incomplete. It is incomplete because it's lacking input. And it is lacking that input because, as the staff report says, this has been done on an expedited basis, as asked for by the Board of County Commissioners. Really? Where? I've gone over the minutes and I will read those minutes to you. These are the official record of the Board of County Commissioners. As the staff report says, previous action taken on September 20th. The minutes from September 20th say, on motion by Commissioner Lucy, seconded by Commissioner Jung, which motion duly carried on a 3-2 vote with Chair Hartung and Commissioner Herman voting no. It was ordered that the allowance of cannabis consumption lounges in unincorporated Washoe County be approved and staff be directed to commence drafting amendments to Washoe County Chapter Code 25 and Chapter 110 for potential adoption by the board. Anybody hear the word anything resembling expedited? It's not there. The other business was on October 11th, and it reads, on motion by Commissioner Jung, seconded by Vice Chair Hill, which motion duly carried on a 3-2 vote with Chair Hartung and Commissioner Herman voting no, it was ordered that the amendment be initiated as outlined in the staff report for agenda item 9. And what does the staff report say for that? It says nothing. I'm going to run out of time if I read you. It says nothing about expedited. Now, that's not to say that maybe somebody didn't ask you, but there is no official record of the Board of County Commissioners seeking to have this handled on an expedited basis. As a result, it lacks input. Things were done in a rushed manner, and you should be under no obligation to adopt something that hasn't gone through the normal process. So I will be back later to explain further why I think you should reject this. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have no further public comment in chambers.
Do we have any public comment online?
I have one hand raised.
Okay.
Rhonda Ticer, please unmute your mic and state your name for the record.
My name is Rhonda Ticer. I am an Incline Village resident.
Go ahead.
You have the floor.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand. Okay, thank you. My problem with cannabis lounges is their hidden costs. Government and business people will profit from the lounges. The short-term financial benefits of cannabis outlets and cannabis lounges to businesses and government are relatively easy to grasp. What Washoe County planners and commissioners don't mention are costs of the long-term unintended consequences. Today's cannabis is described by expert Ben Court, author of Weed, Inc., The Truth About THC, the Pot Lobby, and the Commercial Marijuana Industry. Today's cannabis is just as addictive as opiates and just as dangerous to the human mind because of the high percentage of THC in commercial products. Today's unregulated, high-potency THC products result in psychotic episodes, hallucinations, and long-term medical and psychological problems similar to opiates. Children are lured into thinking cannabis use is socially acceptable in public and are therefore naturally more likely to use today's high-powered cannabis with all the subsequent ill effects on their bodies and minds. When you make public drug use socially acceptable, the public pays the cost. Citizens whose children become high THC cannabis users pay a horrible price. Citizens also pay, through their taxes, for the additional necessary police services, blood testing services, justice services, medical and psychological services, and other hidden costs. According to Wikipedia, cannabis impairs a person's driving ability, and THC was the drug most frequently found in the blood of drivers who had been involved in vehicle crashes. Those with THC in their system are from 3 to 7 times more likely to be the cause of the accident than those who had not used cannabis. Yes, Washoe police will handle THC impaired driving like they handle all other intoxicated driving, but that may be after the accident or injury has already occurred. Please do not legitimize public drug use by allowing cannabis lounges in Washoe County's areas such as Incline Village. In the long run, they are harmful to our children, our families, and our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comment?
We have one more
Okay.
public comment. Helen N. Please unmute your mic and state your name for the record.
Helen, if you're there, you have the floor.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. My name is Helen Neff. I'm an Incline Village resident. I sent my public comment also by email, so I hope that it got to all the concerned parties. I am against this amendment to the Washoe County Code for a number of reasons. It does not address impaired driving and puts public safety at risk, and my written comments explain that in further detail. I am the victim of a crash that happened last year, and the driver that crashed into me when I was legally crossing the street in a crosswalk showed numerous signs of impairment, including disorientation, diminished coordination, distorted senses, delayed reaction time, and confusion. This was all confirmed on body cam video. She had prior DUI. She was not tested. I later learned she was a cannabis user. Since she was not tested, it couldn't be used in court. And this happens all the time in our county. My additional reasons include this amendment is contrary to public health, for which we all pay. The Washoe County Health District continues to encourage people to join the Great American Smokeout, yet the other entities in the county are encouraging smoking by putting through amendment codes such as this type. This code amendment only serves a limited segment of the population. The staff report says it's only for out-of-town visitors and those that have restrictions on their leases. This code amendment is in conflict with the Lake Tahoe Destination Stewardship Plan, which says Tahoe needs to shift its brand away from a party place to a family-oriented outdoor destination. There has not been sufficient time for public outreach and comment, and this amendment is not required by state laws. So thank you for denying that it go forward any further beyond where it is now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comment?
I have no hands raised, no further public comment.
Okay, with that being said, we'll close this public comment, and we're moving to item 6, approval of the December 6, 2022 agenda. I'm asking commissioners to consider under public hearing items number 9 that we hear item B first and then A. And we'll need a motion to amend the agenda.
So be it. This is Rob for the record.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Pat Phillips, second.
Okay, is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Item 7, approval of the November 1st, 2022 draft minutes. Has every commissioner had an opportunity to review the minutes? Go for it.
This is Rob for the record. I move that we accept them as written.
Is there a second?
Commissioner Nelson will second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to approve the draft minutes. Thank you. So moving on, item 8. Oh,
Yeah.
all those in favor, I'm just moving really quickly. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Item 8, Secretary Lowy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This item 8 is an update on the master plan. Staff will discuss progress on the Envision Washoe 2040 project, update the county's master plan, and request the Planning Commission's approval to use the following 4 community-derived aspirations as guided principles for the master plan update. 1, maintain and strengthen access to scenic outdoor recreation opportunities. 2, strengthen access to housing. 3, maintain and strengthen efforts to conserve natural resources. And 4, strengthen access to transportation, including better concurrency of transportation infrastructure with development. Representing Washoe County on this matter are Senior Planner Eric Young and Planner Mitch Markey.
Good afternoon, good evening. Planning Commission, I'm Eric Young from Planning Department. I'm going to just give a really brief introduction and turn this on over to Mitch. This is, I think Mitch has spoken with each of you, but this will be his introduction to speaking to all of you together. So we're going to let Mitch tell you what's up with the master plan lately. The big idea of coming and speaking to you tonight is that we spent a lot of time talking with the community, with each of the CABs, with each of you, with the county commissioners about how big of a change in format, in form that this was going to be. And we had some concerns about what it looks like to change 18 documents down into one document. And we talked to all of you about that. We talked to every CAB about it. And we were able to come to a pretty broad consensus that that is necessary, it's reasonable, logical, that the 18 documents are not reasonable and are causing us some issues, and that distilling them down into this one document is reasonable and it is the way to go. So we appreciate all of your input and the community's input and understanding and coming to that consensus about the need to change the form. We haven't really come to you yet and really talked to you a lot about what we've heard from the community in terms of what they might be asking for content. So we have begun to draft some of the framework around this new structure that we've shared with you. But before we go too far down that road, we want to share with you what are kind of the guiding principles that have shown themselves to us through the public process of a couple of surveys, going out to all of the CABs, both, so it's both what we might call quantitative data and qualitative data, data from the surveys about what people are really saying, and then just the many conversations that we've had throughout CAB meetings with you individually and others. We've kind of distilled that down into these 4 ideas that are helping us shape where we're going with the draft. And so we appreciate the consensus that we got on the form. Tonight we'd like to get your acceptance and acknowledgement of these 4 things that have come out of this public engagement. So that's what we're here for tonight. And I'm going to turn it over to Mitch, and you'll get to see what he's going to tell you how we came to these 4 guiding principles. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mitch Markey, planner, Washoe County for the record. There we go. Cool, so real briefly, I'll run through the agenda. I'm gonna just kind of update you on the timeline, where we stand with the master plan update. We haven't produced a timeline for 2023 yet, but I'll give you a few tidbits there on where we're heading, at least in early 2023. I'll go through the plan content and structure, specifically related to Chapter 2, which is the elements section, and that's really where we've been doing a lot of the heavy lifting lately on. I'll touch on the community aspirations, those 4 community aspirations that Eric kind of just alluded to. And then we'll go through the public outreach portion that we've been tackling the last year or so to hopefully kind of paint the picture as to how we ended up with these aspirations we're bringing to you today. And then finally, we'll kind of determine some next steps, and also we've provided a draft motion for you all in terms of adopting these 4 aspirations. So real briefly, here's the timeline of the last 8 months. You can see right now we're at the star, we're in early December. The last 3 months we've been hitting it hard with really working on the policies and principles related to the master plan elements. Up until then, we had, I believe, 3 steering committee meetings, 3 TAC and CAC meetings, Technical Advisory Committee, Community Advisory Committee meetings, as well as we've had 2 surveys released to the public to solicit for public input. So those previous 8 months have really led to the last 3 months in terms of providing us with information from the CABs, you all, the public, to help us kind of come up with some principles and policies that we feel like really address the core needs of the Washoe County residents. So plan content and structure. The general plan structure is going to be 3 chapters. The foundation, chapter 1, is really going to discuss how did we get here today? So it'll touch on kind of the existing conditions of Washoe County. It'll touch on the public outreach that we've accomplished and are continuing to accomplish related to the master plan update. And it'll really talk about previous master plans and how those have really defined, you know, the county, the shape of the county, and how the county is organized to this day. Chapter 2 is the vision, and that's going to consist of the elements section, as well as the area plan section. And I'll touch on that a little bit more in detail here in a second. Chapter 3 is where, I guess, the rubber hits the road, so to speak. That's going to be the implementation section. It's going to talk about how we're going to transform these policies into, you know, real-world action, whether it's further studies, further initiatives we're going to take, and really how we're going to take those policies and determine, you know, how they're going to be implemented at a county level. And then the last section is going to be the appendices, essentially public outreach, summaries, the plan audit, which I'll actually show you a little snippet of here in a second, as well as any studies, anything else we determine necessary for that section. So chapter 2 is the vision. The first part of chapter 2 is the elements. It's going to contain 5 elements: population, natural resources, public services, land use, and transportation. Within each of those elements, we are going to include regional coordination, which is kind of a new element, so to speak. And that's going to really define in each of those 5 elements how we're going to coordinate with the region as a whole to implement some of these policies. Right here is a crosswalk example. So I mentioned the plan audit before. And I know it's hard to see. The fine print's not really, I guess, important, so to speak, right now. It's just to kind of give you an idea of really the back-end effort that's been undertaken by staff and the consultants. And so we went through each existing policy and goal from the current master plan and itemized those. And within those, we created recommendations, whether it's revise, keep, remove it, or relocate that existing policy elsewhere. And so we found a lot of these policies actually belong in development code. So we've highlighted those in, you know, color coordinated methods to determine where those are going to go, whether it's into another element, into the development code, or whether it's something that we question and may not be relevant anymore. And so I really kind of provided this just to kind of give you a background framework as to, you know, how we came up or how we are coming up with a lot of the new policies and principles related to the master plan update. The additional part of chapter 2 is going to be the specific area plans. And I know we've talked to you all individually about some of this, but we're going to distill down the existing area plans to be a much more focused and to really get at the core as to what really defines each area. Within each of these kind of more distilled area plans, we're still going to identify key issues and opportunities within each area, overall goals, and then we'll also include unique policies to each one as we see fit. So community aspirations. Mr. Lloyd read off them during the introduction to this item, but in summary, really it's concurrency of infrastructure, housing diversity, conservation and natural resources, and outdoor recreation and access. These aspirations are really what we're wanting to kind of bring, or at least hold in the back of our minds as we're going through this process and updating the policies and the principles in each of the elements. And I'm going to kind of go on to the public outreach section to hopefully kind of paint that picture as to how we got to that. Real quick, we do have the GIS hub for Envision Washoe 2040. We've actually gotten quite a bit of usage out of it in the last year, approximately 25,000 views. That doesn't necessarily mean that's individual views. It could be, repeat IP addresses. And then you can also see in the timeline there that the views have peaked, during our survey periods. So back towards the beginning of this year and then in June. And I'll take a brief second to call out our current initiative, which is our photo contest. And if you go to the Envision Washoe 2040 website, there will be a link on there. And we're encouraging, residents, PC members, whoever it might be, to submit, photos of the existing conditions of the county, or even just kind of aspirational photos of, things they would like to see the county do or be in the future. So we're really trying to kind of keep that public outreach game going. So the first questionnaire was countywide, and one of the questions we asked was, what changes have we noticed? It's probably no surprise to most folks, increased traffic, increased growth, housing issues, and lack of infrastructure has really kind of highlighted some of the changes. And what do they love about Washoe County? Well, again, it's probably not much of a surprise, but our natural areas, we're surrounded by a lot of public land, whether it's, the Tahoe and the Sierra foothills or the BLM land out in the desert. The small town feel and rural heritage has really been called upon by the residents as, being things they love about the county. Get frozen here. Okay, so the third question was what needs to be improved? And so, you can kind of see this is correlated with the initial question as to, what changes have you seen? So housing options, transportation, traffic, and infrastructure are some of the things that residents said that they would like to see improved within the county. In addition to the first survey, Eric and the consultants went out in February with the cabs and did kind of a countywide tour. And really their input echoed, what the first survey echoed, and really improved transportation, infrastructure concurrent with development, affordable housing, water quality, other natural resource protection, and the rural character of the county were important. So the final survey, survey number 2, was unique to the area plan. So we actually had residents identify what area plan they reside in. I believe the top 3 in terms of number of responses were North Valleys, South Valleys, and Spanish Springs. We had a total of 571 responses, which was more than double of the initial survey. So I think we had a pretty good response rate. And all the communities chose preserving scenic views, and at least half chose that implementing some sort of dark sky standard, expanding pedestrian and bicycle networks, and promoting the use of renewable energy are really kind of topics that should be addressed in the master plan update. And then finally, every community mentioned at least one of these next 4 items. So affordable housing, traffic, road infrastructure, access and maintenance of public trails, and then protection of natural resources, water quality, and so on. And so you'll see to the right, that's a graphic we came up with, and those are the 4 community aspirations. And so you'll see in the motion we've provided that really concurrency of infrastructure, housing diversity, conservation and natural resources, and outdoor recreation and access. Those are kind of the 4 aspirations we pulled from these public comments that we would like to really focus on in terms of the update to the elements. In terms of next steps, well, in the near term, as in today, we're hoping that Planning Commission would adopt a motion to approve the 4 community aspirations. This December, we're going to finalize the draft elements, the policies and principles within those elements. We're going to distribute those to the TAC and CAC committees by the end of the month, and then hopefully meet with those committees roughly mid-January to discuss the draft elements. We plan to work on the area plan principles and policy developments throughout the month of January, and then spring 2023 is when we hope to have a draft of the master plan update ready to review. So with that, that concludes my presentation. There is a possible motion here if you'd like to entertain that, and we'll open it up to any questions you might have. So thanks.
Okay, thank you. Before I ask for commissioner comments, since it's a planning item, but it is a public item, is this an item for public comment? That would be appropriate. Yes. So do we have any public comment on this item?
In chambers, I have Cliff Lowe, followed by William Naylor.
Okay, thank you.
Hello again. For the record, Cliff Lowe, resident of unincorporated Washoe County. There's an expression some people use about blowing smoke up somebody's rear end. I just want you to know that the way I opened my initial comments to say that I thank you for doing what you do is not blowing smoke up your behinds. If you were to go see my public comment before the Board of County Commissioners, you would know that I'm on the record as expressing severe concerns about the lack of civility that's expressed towards people who serve in positions like you, and outright harassment of some people who are not even elected their positions. As far as this agenda item goes, there's also an expression, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And what that kind of means is, to me anyway, is that beauty is what you perceive it to be, and it's kind of an individual thing. These community-derived aspirations should not be open to wide interpretation. They should be precise. And I would share with you that if you think about it, in the last 10 years or so, there's a word that has become totally twisted and no longer has any clear meaning. That word is access. What is meant by access? It's used here 3 times. Access to scenic outdoor recreation, access to housing, access to transportation. What that used to mean is people either lacked the physical ability to get there, or there was a barrier, typically a physical barrier or some legal prohibition. Is that what's meant here? I doubt it. I would ask that you seek to have what this word access means. Does it, in the case of maintain and strengthen access to scenic outdoor recreation, does that mean to preserve what's there? Does it mean to add more outdoor recreation opportunities? Sometimes access has been used in current day. It means sometimes that people lack the monetary resources. They can't afford something. Here it says strengthen access to housing. Does that mean that the Envision Washoe 2040 should provide subsidies to people so they can move into the kind of housing that they want? Is that what is meant by access here? And strengthen access to transportation. Does that mean to create more transportation? And if so, what kind of transportation? It's totally unclear to me. Does it mean that Envision Washoe 2040 should encourage that there be more public transportation? Should people receive a subsidy so they can get their own vehicles? So I decry the use of the word access here because it is ambiguous. It becomes in the eye of the beholder. And while I think they are worthy probably and they're well-intended, I think that it should be clarified at least on the record before you adopt these so that the people know what you meant by adopting these. Thank you.
Lastly, I have William Naylor.
Good evening. My name is William Naylor, 44-year resident of Washoe County, Washoe Valley. This whole Envision 2040 thing has been very frustrating because it's been an incredibly closed process. We got involved with it in February at kind of an ad hoc meeting down at Washoe Lake State Park that the citizens put together to meet the consultants. At that time, we found out this thing had been going on for 1.5 years, and we never knew it. One of the things that had been done during that period of time was this crosswalk table was created where they stripped out 70% of the goals and policies of our South Valley's area plan. 70% is about average. Some did worse, some did better for all of the different areas in Washoe County. We asked for the crosswalk table. We asked Eric Young 4 times. 3 times he told us he'd give it to us. He didn't. The 4th time he said he wouldn't because it was incomplete, a work in process. We asked Dave Solero for it. He said he would give it to us, and then he turned around and said, no, it has to go before the Board of County Commissioners because it's not in a format that's easily readable by you citizens. Never heard back from him what the commissioners did. We never got a copy. Apparently, since it's appeared in a public meeting, we probably should be getting a copy of that. Right, Eric? Okay, as far as the aspirations, I don't know if you've all gone on the website and looked, but there are about 8 or 9 of them in there. The number one, as mentioned, was to maintain, strength, and access to public recreation. That was number 1 with almost everybody. We wonder if that includes trails and bike paths and that kind of thing. Number 2, strengthen access to housing. That was at the bottom of the list. People are horrified with these apartment complexes that are going up all over the area, which will become ghettos in about 20 years. Number 3, maintain strength and efforts to conserve natural resources. That was high with most everybody, as they pointed out. And strengthen access to transportation was again down in the bottom, absolute bottom, or within the 3 bottom items. It just wasn't that much of an interest. But I guess what I really wonder is why are they going with only 4? All of the items in all those aspirations are significant, and all of them should be considered to one level or another, one priority or another, rather than picking out 4 of them here for you to say, yeah, that's what we want to do and that's what we want to go with. One of the ones that was high that didn't show up at all was to make development match local character, and that definitely should be in there. You've heard the people of Verde screaming about development and so on. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Do we have any further public comment?
I have no further public comment in chambers.
I have no hands raised on Zoom, no further public comment.
Okay, thank you. We'll close the public comment and bring it back to the board. Are there questions for staff? Commissioner Phillips?
Thank you. This is a wonderful picture of ideas and trying to condense it. But one of the things that worries me are the generalizations in this. I have shall we say, a habit of looking for loopholes. And the way this is written seems to open it up to more loopholes that will come up, and guess who gets to deal with those in the future? How are you going to handle this?
Yeah, Mitch Markey, planner for the record. I think kind of the main thing to take away from this is that these are overly broad and general for a reason, because access doesn't mean the same thing in South Valleys as it does in North Valleys. Neither does housing or the other 2 aspirations. And so I think in terms of having these general aspirations, this gives Eric, myself, the consultants, the CAC-TAC, the flexibility to come up with policies that fit the needs of the community. And so having these 4 aspirations be overly prescriptive really only addresses the needs to that community that you're prescribing that aspiration to. And so I think having it be broad, open-ended is kind of more advantageous. And Eric, feel free to add if you'd like.
Eric Young, thank you for that. The master plan is a very high-level document. working towards the implementation aspect is what we're really trying to get towards eventually. I think that a good question, and something all of you might be wondering, is what does it mean to adopt aspirations? What does it mean to accept these? What are we really asking you to do? And what we're asking you to do is to recognize what we are doing, and that is, as we develop the draft, we need to make sure that that draft is responsive to the things that we've heard in the past year. And so the first question is, what did we hear? The surveys, our notes, our meetings with you, and I don't know if you remember, I was taking extensive notes. All of the CAB meetings, we have notes on what we heard. And so when we sit down and we say, okay, what did we hear in a broad master plan level? We heard that housing is important. We heard that transportation is important. We heard that natural resources are important, and we heard that access to outdoor recreation is important. And those 4 things we heard everywhere. We heard a lot of other things, very important things that will show up in the master plan. They're in the notes, they're noted. They're not going to be set aside. But when we take our drafts that are going back and forth between the consultant and us right now, we need to make sure that what we heard is in there. And so what we do is we go through those drafts and we say, okay, are we responding to housing? Are we responding to this concurrency of infrastructure issue? Are we responding to preservation of natural resources? So every time that we create a document, we go through and we check it against those 4 things. And we wanted to let you know that we're doing that, what those 4 things are, that we're really double checking that we heard universally throughout the community, right? Those are the things we heard universally. And so we wanted to get your acknowledgement of that. Here, if there's other things, you say, well, what about this or that? Or is something missing? If you have questions about what the meaning of those things are, we'd love to answer them tonight. But that's the sense of what it means to acknowledge or adopt a community aspiration for us to build this plan around. I hope that helped a little bit, Commissioner Phillips.
Commissioner Flick?
Yes, I have a question. Sir, I have a question. Every board or commission that I've served on always has at least 3 of those 4 items. And it seems like we spend an awful lot of time gathering information on what we got, and after we have that, we run out of money to do anything about implementing some of the things that you found out. A big concern is, I think we've certainly been responsive to housing. I mean, we got housing going on everywhere. But it doesn't respond to affordable housing. Okay, so it's almost like an impossible situation where you need the housing, but if there's a shortage, the price goes up. And that's just simple economics, and we've all experienced it. So after you finish all of this, what's next? Are we going to get some more streets built? Or are we going to look at a map and say, well, we need that? Access that the gentleman brought up, it does range, comes to light of a wide range of possibilities of what access means. Access, public transportation, private transportation. I don't know what it means. And you know, until we get pretty little more specific, we're still dealing in generalities, and I certainly won't be here in 2080, but the next 40-year plan is probably going to have pretty much the same thing, only it's going to be a little more crowded with folks. And the ability to achieve those ideals is going to be that much more difficult.
Thank you. Other commissioners?
Lazareski for the record. For staff, can you answer when would be the next time that a master plan item would be coming before us for approval? Would that be when there's a draft, or is there another step before that?
May I ask what you mean by approval?
For action.
For an action, for an actual public hearing to move it forward?
Yeah.
So that's going to be a little while. We're going to have many more interactions with you. We're going to ask you to sponsor a community open house out here in the lobby, probably the night before a planning commission meeting, and then we'll talk about it. So we're going to have, there's significant more outreach with the community on what this draft is going to look like. We haven't shared the draft with anybody yet, right? We might have to make some changes before we ask you to adopt it. So as we develop the draft, then we'll go back out to the Citizens Advisory Committee and the Technical Advisory Committee, the Steering Committee. We'll get their input. We'll go back to the CABs, and we'll get input and find out what kind of adjustments we need to make in order to come to a draft that we would ask you to adopt. And we're going to be doing that in the middle of next year when we bring that to you. This whole project is scheduled to wrap up this fiscal year. So sometime in July, we'd like to be with you for a vote. Now that vote will be two different things. It will be both, and you've done this before when there are applications. It will be both a master plan amendment for the master plan, but there will be a handful of development code amendments that will have to go along with it. And so that development code process requires two hearings at the county commission, as I'm sure you're aware. I mean, it requires one here, but that's the next step, is to bring forward to you as the timeline, the timeline has changed a lot from what's going to happen from now to the end, but the end date has not changed, right? The end date is still this fiscal year at the end of June, this July. We still want to have a document for you to act on. So that's going to require a lot of time with the community between now and then.
Okay, and if we don't take an action tonight to formally adopt these aspirations, what's the impact on your process? Because those can certainly still exist at a staff level without planning commission adoption, right?
I'm not sure what that would mean to you. I would ask you for the meaning of your no vote. I would ask you for what that means. Is it that you want something else, that you're not comfortable with those? We're not comfortable voting, yeah, go ahead and move forward on those. We just don't want to vote. I would have to ask you what your intention of not doing that would be. If you do decide not to do that, without further direction, say, well, we're not going to do that, and here's some direction for you. If you don't give us extra direction, we'll come in tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock and just keep doing what we're doing.
So if we do adopt these aspirations, you'll come in tomorrow and do the job, and if we don't adopt these aspirations and don't give direction, otherwise, you will come in and do the same job.
Yes, sir.
Thanks.
Other commissioners?
Are you planning on doing more public outreach than just surveys from here until the end of the fiscal year?
The surveys are probably done. We haven't contemplated another survey. If we have an idea for one, we'll do one. The public outreach from here on out will be more in person. All of the cabs again, At least one workshop, hopefully sponsored by you, that you are engaged in helping us put on. So those are the primary forms of outreach, or the CAB meetings, the TAC, the CAC, and a community workshop. And probably not a survey.
Thank you.
Other questions?
This is Rob for the record. Is this going to be I received no paperwork on this, nothing, other than your planning items. Is this how it's going to be going forward?
No. We don't have a draft for you to look at yet.
Right, I understand that, but we didn't even get a motion or nothing. I mean.
Right. And that has to do with the timing of how, of the administrative dates of getting everything done and getting to you and when we were asked to do this. So, no, that's not how it would always be, I don't think. No, that's just how the calendar fell on this particular one and us getting it together. Yeah.
Commissioner Pierce, if I may, in terms of this presentation, you had this done today, correct?
We finished it this morning.
So it could have been emailed to commissioners.
We probably could have emailed it to you. We weren't asked to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in the future, if you would consider, as you do these documents, if you could just include us. I mean, we get your report at each commission meeting, but as Commissioner Pierce has indicated and Commissioner Lazareski has been, and I'm probably not pronouncing that correctly. Oh, good. has noted feeling left out of the process. Would that be a fair statement? Okay.
Well, nobody wants you to feel left out of the process. So tell me how you want to be included in the process.
If I may continue then, commissioners, is that when and this is not a criticism at all, but when I had my meetings with you, the main thing that I continued to express was community input. And I had assurances from you that the area plans may change, but the area plans would be present and address specifically to the communities.
Yes.
Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
Okay. And so, and then if commissioners, because they do represent different districts, within the county, that matters to us to be able to, if people ask us about this, we can say. And as I expressed to you is that, I was involved with the regional plan update, and there were meetings all the time and lots of stuff to read, so that it gave the impression of being very transparent. So I'm not asking you to change things, but I'm asking you to consider that the community needs to feel that planning staff is working in their best interest and in the best interest of the county. And
okay, I appreciate all that. What do you?
What would be really helpful for a starter
yeah.
is that this presentation tonight be put up on the website, and maybe even on the front, you and I've talked about this, on the front page of the county website, because people have a hard time when they have to make multiple clicks. It's hard for them to figure out where the plan update is. And then emailed it to all of us, please.
Sure, you will get it. The plan is for this to go up with a summary of this meeting and the feedback we got from you, to put that up on our website. We do have some issues with engaging with the county website. There are some limitations with our ability to go on the county website. But we will, on our website, on the front page, have this briefing with this on there. We wanted to wait and get the feedback from this meeting to put up on there. So we can certainly do that.
And I will tell my fellow commissioners that when we were doing the regional plan update, there was lots of aspirational language, but as the plan was written, there were drill downs specifically to things. And right now, the Regional Planning Commission is going through the natural resource update, and it's very specified. So it was aspirational, and now it's drilling down. Commissioner Phillips, do you have you're pushing your button.
The thing that kind of worries me is we come into the meetings and I know this is a poor exaggeration of what comment. It's like you go to get your marriage license, but you don't know who you're going to marry. We need to know the information when we come in here. It really helps us to provide questions that I think will create your job to be easier, actually.
Other questions? So this is, if we could have that motion put back up on the screen. It's not there, so. Somebody does. Go ahead.
If I could, Lazareski, for the record. I don't feel like we've had deliberation time with this information. It seems clear that in the absence of direction otherwise, staff has a path to go down. I would make a motion that we hold over this item for the next.
We table it till next month.
Table it until next month.
Okay.
Commissioner Phillips, second.
Prior to taking discussion from fellow commissioners, Secretary Lloyd, is that in terms of this can come back to us next month?
This will certainly come back to you, and that was it was anticipated that this is just, for the most part, a status update. Both Eric and Mitch have been doing, boy, a lot of work in the process. At this time, we don't have any drafts to present to you, and that's part of the reason you don't have much in the way of paperwork. That's coming, and there's going to be a lot of information coming your way.
And I'm not meaning to dredge into this.
Yes.
And, keep beating at this, but if we'd have had this ahead of time, we might have been able to take more action.
Understood. But this will be coming back to you, yes.
Do you need anything from us between now and then? Or do you just want it to come back?
Commissioners?
I'm not sure what it means to come back. Do we do anything, or does it just?
I think any information on the aspirations that were considered and not selected
and yes,
would be helpful, because as aspirations, I can find no fault with these four things. But if these are the four things that we as a county are basing all fall down goals and eventually code from, just some clarification of what the process was at selecting these four out of the vast array of aspirations.
Sure. Did you guys make a decision log while you're going through the process? That would be helpful if we had that.
This, I think, excuse me. Hard to see.
it is very hard to see.
I think that we may have been presenting to you something that is somewhat informal on our part, and you're thinking that we did something very formal. We didn't do something very formal. We didn't create a decision log. We didn't create a spreadsheet with data and say what came out number 1, 2, 3, and 4. We've spent an enormous amount of time with the community at CAB meetings talking with people. We spent an enormous amount of time developing these surveys based on their feedback, going through the data of the surveys. This is your staff's representation of what we feel came out of that. We don't have data and numbers to show you other than what the survey has. And everybody can go on the website and see the survey and the summary and all the same data that we have. This is your professional staff's representation of what we feel we've understood and heard from the community over the last year. And we wanted to let you know that, and we wanted to let you know that we're building the draft around those four things. There are indeed many things, not one of which we would want to argue with. But in our representation and our feeling, these are the things that rise to the top. And these are the things that we feel, if we come forward with a plan that does not represent these things, we will hear about it in every single community. Because these are the four things that came out of every community. There are individual things that came out of 2 or 3, 4 or 5, here or there. These are the four things that arose universally in our experience and estimation. So we're not going to be able to give you data or numbers that say, or a decision log that says a decision tree that says how we got to that.
Okay. Commissioner Lazarus, you have another comment?
Yeah, if I could.
And then Commissioner.
To that, absolute respect for the work that you guys are doing, and I think maybe the confusion there is in this. Us adopting these four things is a formal step. So it sounds like maybe you don't actually want us to vote on that. If this is your professional opinion based on the vast amount of information you've gathered, then it's not important that we vote on your opinion.
I think I respect that. I get where you're coming from. I think what's important for us is that we have a mutual understanding that you know what we're doing and you don't say, no, don't do that. We'd rather you do this, or no, those aren't important to us, or that one's not important to us, scratch it off the list. Or, hey, where did this one go? Because I know for a fact that one's important. That kind of discussion. So what we need to get out of tonight is that we're all on the same plate, that we're all in the same place, and that our planning commission understands what their staff is doing to build this first draft. We just want to make sure when we come back to you and show you that draft, and when we're out there with the community, you don't go, what the heck where did this come from? We're letting you know tonight where it came from.
Commissioner Flick?
Yes. It's not that I'm against the four items. I just don't really know how specific. They're not specific. I think I need a very clear definition of what it is. And just as important, how do we measure our progress in achieving those goals for each one of those categories? It's one thing to say, well, this is a goal, but are we treading water? Are we making any steps to achieve this? I think that's every bit as important.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Nielsen, did you?
It just seems like there's a disconnect from when we initially had our meetings till now. We haven't really we've gotten updates, but they haven't been really in depth, and that's maybe the tripping up that we're having is we really don't know what this means going forward. I mean, a status update is one thing, but a status update with emotion is another, I guess.
And I would add to my fellow commissioners in terms of the crosswalk as you presented it, because those tables are very small, so we don't know what the N is on who responded. And then we have the Wordle, and I'm pretty familiar with Wordles. The bigger the thing is, the more important it is. And in the presentation, in one of those Wordles, housing was pulled out, but it didn't have the same significance as safety and all of those others. So if the planning staff is using that crosswalk from the public input, then somewhere in there, we need to address that in the document to some level, because that, is like, so this is what happened during the crosswalks. This is what happened, and as we drilled through it, through the different advisory groups, to the community action, and then the public input sessions, here's where we're at today. And so for next month, when you have that for us, and the community can see it as well, that there's a link in the agenda to it, that would be extremely helpful, I believe.
Well, we're not going to share the entire crosswalk.
No. Just what you shared tonight.
That is the point of sharing that slide is to get across the comprehensive nature and the complexity of what we're doing. What Mitch showed on that is that we are looking at every single policy in all 18 documents.
Exactly.
And we're saying, does this exist somewhere else? Is this code? Where should it go? And then we're saying, what should we do with it? And that is a working document that can change as we go through. And so the reason that we don't share it is not because it's too complicated. And, yeah, it's complicated. There's smart people that can figure it out, not just us. And it's complicated to me, I can barely figure it out. But it's because it's a working document, and it can change on a daily basis as we go through. And we say, oh, well, here's what we're actually doing with that, or we've decided to put it here. No, we want to keep that instead of getting rid of it. We had some of that just recently when y'all know Vahid, our water guy, went through a draft of the public service and facilities element. And he said, you can't get rid of this stuff, you got to keep this stuff. So we found out we needed to do something different with it. So that's the reason we don't want to share that entire document. And the purpose of showing that slide is to get across to the public and to you the comprehensive nature of what we're doing, that we're looking at every word in that document, and that is a very complex and tedious process. So that was the purpose of that slide.
Okay. Any other questions? Commissioner Pierce?
This is Rob for the record. You mentioned that, correct me if I'm wrong, July is the drop dead date, right? You have to have it all done by then. Is there anything we can do to extend that date to help you? That we have maybe the power to do?
Well, thank you. I don't know that I would call it a drop dead date. It's the date when the contract ends with the consultant. So in that sense, it's kind of a drop dead. They'll have to continue some work until they spend all the money. But that's the sense that it comes to an end, and it's important to me to have that. If we keep moving it out, then we'll just keep moving it out. There could be a point at which when we have to sit down, when I have to come to you and say, I'm sorry I couldn't do the timeline, could you give me some more time? And if that's necessary, I'll do that, and I very much appreciate the attitude that might be okay. But for me right now, it's really important to keep a kind of a drop dead date to keep us all on track.
Right, okay. I'm just concerned. I want to do it right the first time.
Thank you.
So, and we appreciate the work
Yes,
you guys are doing,
absolutely.
for sure.
We appreciate your efforts, and we know that you're doing your due diligence. And the only thing that I'd add to that is people's perceptions are people's realities. And if they feel like information is not being shared, they need some place to go to be able to ask those questions.
Well, I think I do have a sense of what would make your review of these 4 principles, aspirations, easier for you, where they came from. I have a sense of what you're asking for, thinking about how we can do that. A part of it is not putting all of our eggs in the survey baskets.
Yes.
Because the surveys are really nice because they have graphics, and like you said, you can see big words come out. Hey, that popped out. How come that's not number 1 everywhere? Well, we have CAB meetings, and we have one-on-one meetings and stakeholder meetings that add to that pot of information. So I'm thinking about how to present to you how we came up with that, and we'll do a better job of that and get back to you at your next meeting with something that you can review before the meeting, and we'll have the ability to discuss that. And if you choose to adopt those and move forward, that's great. But we may be to a point where, I don't know, I'll talk it over with Trevor and Kelly and others about whether asking you to vote on something is appropriate. I can see that you have some legitimate concerns about voting on something, and so we'll talk over what we're really trying to do. And I think, as I mentioned, what we're really concerned about, what we really wanted to do tonight, is just to make sure that we're all on the same page. You kind of know what we're doing and where we're coming from, and that in a few months from now, you don't say, what the heck? That's what we're doing.
And I don't think that we have reservations about voting. What we just want is to have the information ahead of time, to be
Okay.
able to review it so we can ask really informed questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we do need to have a motion to formally, because you did make that motion, right? And, okay, any other discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. We're now at public hearing for, which is now the 9A, the tentative subdivision map for Highland Village Phase 2. Secretary Lloyd.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This item before you tonight is tentative subdivision map case number WTM 22004 and variance case number WPV AR 220003 for hearing, discussion, and possible action to approve a common open space tentative subdivision map on 18.4 acres of 73 lots ranging in size from 3,533 square feet to 10,460 square feet, and to vary the grading standards in Washoe County Code 110, 438, 45A to allow a 2-to-1 slope. The site is located between Highland Ranch Parkway and East 9th Avenue, east of Klondike Drive. Representing Washoe County in this matter is planner Julie Olander.
Thank you.
Good evening, Julie Olander for the record. So this is a request for a, it's not moving.
While you're bringing that up, I'll ask fellow commissioners if there's any disclosure of ethics or ex parte communications on this. Okay, thank you.
So this is a request for common open space tentative subdivision map on 18.4 acres for 73 lots. And the lots will range in size from 3,553 square feet to 10,460 square feet, and to vary the grading standards in Washoe County Code 110, 438.45A to allow slopes of 2-to-1 slopes. And the parcel is located out on Highland Ranch Parkway. You can see where these three parcels are. As some of you might remember, across the street on Highland Ranch was a previous subdivision map that was approved previously. And this is the layout of the property and the zoning and the master plan. So the northern portion has a master plan designation of as rural and a zoning of general rural, and then the lower portion is as a master plan designation of suburban residential and zoning of high-density suburban. And you can see the property across the street is high-density suburban. The parcels to the south, the pink is medium-density suburban, and then to the directly to the south is public semi-public facility. That's where the elementary school is located. And the Stone Canyon subdivision is the subdivision located to the south off of Highland Ranch Parkway. And then Stone Creek subdivision is to the west, and Palmer Elementary School is to the south. The subject is within the suburban character management area of Sun Valley Area Plan and has been identified as an area for residential growth. The applicant, as some of you will remember, has come before you for a master plan and regulatory zone amendment, which was approved by the Planning Commission in December of 2021. And that was to reconfigure the boundaries of the master plan and zoning, and then also to change the LDS to high-density suburban. The Board of Commissioners heard this item, however, and asked that there was a development agreement was created to limit the number of lots. The item was returned to the Board of County Commissioners on August 16th of 2022, and the first hearing for the development agreement was heard, and then the master plan and zone change were approved. The development agreement was for to create a density of 4.5 dwelling units per acre for the 18-acre site with a maximum of 82 total dwellings, and that was approved by the Board of County Commissioners on September 13th. The master plan amendment went before the Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Agency on November 21st, and that was determined to be in conformance with the regional plan. So this has had some background. So at this point, as I said, it's moving forward with the common open space with 73 lots. The applicant is requesting the variance for this grading. Just want to point out that the DA, the development agreement, allowed 82 units. The developer is only proposing 73 units. Here's the layout of the parcel. You can see of the parcels. You can see primarily the residential development is at the southern portion of the parcel, and the northern portion is being maintained as open space. And there's a what they call the rocky knoll on that northern portion. This is the range of this. Like I said, the range of the lots is about 3,000 to 10,000 square feet. I just want to point out I made an error in this diagram, in this chart, when I had average lot size. It is 4,922 square feet. I think I had 5,000 something. I'm not sure where I got that number, but I apologize for that. But the front setbacks are going to be 15 feet for the Highland Village. If it was high density, it'd be 20 feet. And the same thing for the rear. It's 15 in the front, and high density would be 20. So there's a bit of a change there. The side setback is still 5 feet. There's no minimum lot size in Highland Village. However, if it was high density, it would be 5,000 square feet. And then minimum lots width is 47 in Highland and 60 in high density. And the same height is required in both development, in both Highland and high density. The request is for common open space, and the applicant is proposing 4.26 acres of common open space, which will include a pocket park for children's structure. We'll have a children's structure and a shade structure and tables and benches. They're also proposing public trails, and I'll show you a map in just a minute that'll show the trails. And then the trails will be maintained by the HOA. And here's a map showing the trails. So there'll be trails primarily in the northern portion, and then also connecting to the development to the south, and then also across the street to Highland Village, the Highland Village 1. Water and sewer will be provided by the Sun Valley General Improvement District, and that has been reviewed by the GID. They have said they have capacity for both the sewer and the water that's required. The applicant will have to apply to the Truckee Meadows Water Authority to get the water rights that are required for the development. And just to point out, the sewage from the site will go to Truckee Meadows Water Reclamation Facility in Sparks. The main access is off of Highland Ranch Parkway. The traffic analysis indicates that with the 73 homes, it'll generate 661 average daily trips, with 52 AM peak trips, AM peak hour trips, and then 69 PM peak hour trips. The traffic analysis recommends a westbound turn lane onto Highland Ranch, and the county engineering group has also provided some conditions to address traffic improvements. The applicant is looking at abandoning Klondike Avenue or Klondike Drive, which is an undeveloped roadway along the western boundary of the site, and also they're also looking at the 9th Street Avenue of possibly abandoning it or making some improvements, and I'm sure that the applicant will speak to that more fully. Washoe County School District has indicated that they are not seeing any conflicts with the ability to provide for the students that are proposed to come with this development. They're looking at 14 elementary students, 7 middle school students, and 9 high school students. And this is sort of the layout. So in 2022 and 23, it does look that Hug High will be over. However, the school district is anticipating by 27 and 28 they will be fine. So they are not seeing any significant conflicts. As the grading on the site, they're proposing approximately 56,345 cubic yards of cuts and 60,973 cubic yards of fill. And I just want to point out that there is no special use permit required with a tentative map for grading, that the tentative map application, as long as the applicant submits the grading plans with the tentative map, then that can be reviewed as part of the application. And also, the applicant did not say that hillside development, Article 424, was triggered. So they didn't have to address that. And here's a map with showing the slope where the primary slopes are. And then also, regarding the variance, they are asking for a variance to allow for 2-to-1 slopes. They're indicating that this is needed to meet the Sun Valley Area Plan. I forgot the A on the area, I apologize. Policy 4.2, which states hillside development shall disturb the minimum area required for construction and conserve steep slopes in their natural state. And they're proposing the 2-to-1 slope to reduce the area that's disturbed and also to provide for that natural state. And that's primarily occurring in the northern portion of the parcel. You can see that this is where that 2-to-1 slope is going to occur, just north of where the residents are proposed to be located, or the lots. The applicant did hold a neighborhood meeting on November 16th at 5:30 at the Sun Valley Neighborhood Neighborhood Center. They had 5 attendees. The items they looked at or that we discussed were the number of homes. There was concern about traffic and roadways, school crossings and sidewalks, and traffic signals. And the applicant did address those questions fairly thoroughly with those the attendees. Notice was sent out to 116 parcels. I did not receive any phone calls or emails concerning this item. And here's a map showing who was noticed. Various agencies have reviewed the application, and agencies with conditions provided those in the conditions of approval and are in your staff report. Engineering is asking for to replace one of their conditions to SS. I'm not going to read through this. This is basically addressing some of the concerns on 9th Street with the school. So this would be an amended conditions. And I'm not sure if that got included in I don't think it got included in your packet, but I think it's in what will be signed tonight. So this is the additional condition, or amended condition, excuse me. And then also the possible motions are provided in the staff report. Do you want me to read through this amended condition? Do you need a little time to read this, or should I read it to you?
If you could read through it, please.
Okay. Prior to the issuance of the final map, the applicant shall provide design improvements to the portion of East 9th Street between the existing school and the development site to the satisfaction of the engineer. These improvements shall include, but are not limited to, sidewalks from the proposed development to the school, pavement improvements, and school zone signage and striping as applicable. In addition, Highland Ranch Parkway shall be evaluated by the Washoe County in conjunction with Washoe County School District to determine the need for school zone safety improvements. Those school zone safety improvements required shall be constructed to the satisfaction of the county engineer. I know that the applicant is here and has a presentation. I'm available for questions. I don't know if you want to just move on to their presentation.
Do the applicant presentation, then we'll do for public comment, and then we'll bring it back to the board to ask questions.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Ken Crater with Crater Consulting Group, and I am the applicant on this project. We have, I think most importantly, done a significant amount of public outreach on this project. We've now had 2 neighborhood meetings. We met with the Sun Valley Citizen Advisory Board. We presented it to the Sun Valley General Improvement District. We've had individual meetings along with our trips to the Planning Commission and Board of County Commissioners. And at this point, I really feel like we've addressed all of the issues that the neighborhood has raised on this. So I'm going to go through here pretty quickly and really focus what I think is the meat of the project. Let's see. Oh, there it goes. So you know where it is. There's some photos of the site. This photo is looking from that rocky knoll, And the whole reason we did the master plan amendment and zone change, not just high-density suburban zoning, but the previous master plan and zoning only protected a very small portion of this rocky knoll. And we felt that this was an important area to the neighborhood. It's a great recreational opportunity for trails. So we basically went from, I think, 1.6 or 1.7 to 3.7 acres now of rural and general rural area. So this will protect that rocky knoll and create those recreational opportunities as required by the Sun Valley Area Plan. Again, this is from the rocky knoll looking to the west. And it's beautiful views up here. You can see this picture in particular, and with that trail system around here, I think it'll be a great amenity for the neighborhood. And actually at the neighborhood meeting, several folks said they walk along Klondike all the time, and they were very happy with the idea of having a trail so they can walk to the top of the rocky knoll and enjoy the view and scenery from here. And again, you can see the steepest part of the site is around and north of that rocky knoll. So again, with the master plan amendment and zone change, we're now protecting that area. The other steep slopes you see are man-made, either when they rerouted a ditch or built Highland Ranch Parkway. Again, wholly within the Sun Valley Area Plan, within the suburban character management area. We did all the studies on this: traffic, geotechnical report, hydrology, sewer. Even though a traffic study wasn't completed, we still did one, and the county engineers reviewed that, and the recommendations from the traffic engineer are part now of the conditions of approval. This shows some of the excerpts from the Sun Valley Area Plan. But again, the most important thing is having that 2-to-1 slope reading up to that rocky knoll is going to be more fitting. It's a steep slope now. We're able to mine the rocks and use those same rocks that have the structural integrity in our rockery walls. We're going to have landscape benches in between. So I think our grading plan with the 2-to-1 slope really deals with the Sun Valley Area Plan and minimizing the amount of grading and really further protecting that rocky knoll. And also the trails is a big part of the Sun Valley Area Plan, and we'll have connectivity up to the rocky knoll, up to Highland Ranch Parkway, into Highland Ranch Village across the street, as well as down to the elementary school and adjoining subdivisions. And this again just shows the site in relationship to the zoning and master planning, and it shows that new trail system now that will go from the elementary school up Klondike Avenue, which will be abandoned, and around to the rocky knoll, creating a loop. And we even figured out a way to get a trail system back down to our main entrance off of Highland Ranch Parkway, which you'll see here in a second. This Julie put up there, but again, we're integrating this with our development, so students that are living in the development that's already been approved, Highland Village, they'll be able to cross at a marked intersection with the crosswalk, and it will also have the flashing beacons that are push button activated, so they don't flash 24/7, which creates that false sense of security. Somebody actually has to push that button, which then activates the flashing beacons, which is a much safer situation. So then they'll be able to walk down through development to the school, all on public sidewalks, where right now none exist. And some of the keys on this thing is a lot of Klondike Avenue, which is one of those old streets that was offered dedication to the county, was never built. It's too steep. It could never meet county code. And somebody rough graded it. So now when it rains, it's been eroding that section of Klondike. So we're going to abandon it, but we're also going to revegetate and grade those steep slopes to stop the erosion issues that are occurring in that area, and instead create a trail system for use from the public. Also, with this project, we have a T intersection. When this project across the street was planned, they were looking at doing a 4-leg intersection that would provide access both to Highland Village across the street and this project. But T intersections are much safer because there's so fewer conflicts at a 3-leg intersection compared to a 4-leg intersection. And when you have elementary school students crossing, it's even more critical to make that intersection as safe as possible. With a 3-leg intersection, you only have a single left in versus a 4-leg where you have lefts in both directions, lefts out in 2 directions. So we're able to design this to meet RTC and Washoe County standards with T intersection for this project and a T intersection for the approved project to the north. So I think that's going to be much safer. We're going to have flashing beacons at 2 intersections, not just 1. So I think it's going to be a huge safety improvement from what was previously planned. This is part of Highland Village, but just to reinforce this, because this was a big issue with the neighborhood, is the traffic calming that's going to occur with Highland Village down 7th Street, all down, Midnight Drive, all the way down to 7th Avenue. So this will be done as part of the final map and addresses a big concern that the neighborhood had. Again, lots of public input, and we heard consistently some of the same things. Pedestrian connectivity, street lighting. I'm very proud to say that we got the county to agree to let us put in 3 street lights at all our intersections in Highland Ranch Parkway. Now there's only a single street light at Midnight and Highland. So we're going to be tripling the amount of lighting at that intersection. That was a big issue to the neighborhood. Lot sizes, home pricing. I think one of the reasons the neighborhood likes this is it really fits with the Sun Valley area. It's consistent with their neighborhoods, and it's going to be all detached, single-family housing, and it's not affordable housing, but it's going to be at the lower end of the price point that is closer to what people can actually afford today, especially with high interest rates. Again, the neighborhood meetings we went through, pretty much the same things consistently over and over, which is why we really worked hard to address that. The county commission wanted further assurance with the development agreement. So if I drop dead tomorrow, whoever took over from filled my shoes would still be limited to this density. Again, we're allowed 82. We're coming in with 73 because that's what makes sense for the site. 82 lots just wouldn't even work on this site. So the biggest remaining issues is we've been working very closely with the school district on 9th Avenue. If you've been out to the site during school hours, you've seen that 9th is very busy. The school buses drop off the kids there, and parents, there's not enough parking within the elementary school parking lot, so a lot of them pull onto 9th Street and 9th Avenue to be able to drop off their kids. So what we came up with, the school district loves it, the principal loves it, we're going to finish improving the rest of that street. We're going to put a cul-de-sac bulb at the east end, so now parents can go down 9th Avenue, turn around in the cul-de-sac, and we'll have parking on the north side. We have 24 spaces available for parallel parking along there. They can drop their kid off. They'll now have a sidewalk to walk all the way around back to the school, or if the parents walk their kids. But it's going to create a lot of additional parking that doesn't exist. And I heard again that the principal was very happy with this plan that we have. It'll be to the satisfaction of the county engineer, and whether the county decides to abandon this and the school district maintains it or the county maintains it as a public street, we've committed to doing these improvements regardless. It'll be better for our project, it'll add value, and it'll be a huge improvement for the school. And then the other things is I'm going to do everything I can on our residential construction tax, because that's about $1,000 per unit, or $288,000 combined between the two projects. That's a lot of money for parks. I'm going to do my best to get in front of the Washoe County Park staff and commission and see if some of this money can stay in Sun Valley, right? Because the money's being generated in Sun Valley, and I'd love to see at least some of this stay there. And the feedback I got from the community is they will work with us to see if we can get some of this money to remain for improvements within the Sun Valley area. And then the last thing is I was a traffic engineer for the city of Reno. I've got 30 years experience in traffic engineering, and I feel that Highland Ranch Parkway should be strongly considered for a school zone, and the neighbors agree. This was one of the biggest concerns they had. So I worked with Mitch Fink, the county traffic engineer, and now we have that condition, amended condition 2SS, process, and we are now going to be able to evaluate Highland Ranch Parkway for a school zone for additional safety improvements for the students crossing there, even above and beyond the flashing beacon. And I think this was one of the biggest concerns of the neighborhood. It's just the safety of elementary school children crossing that street. So I'm very happy that we all came to agreement that this is a serious issue that needs serious consideration. And I believe when all is said and done, hopefully we will get that school on there to really slow down traffic. If you've been on Highland Ranch Parkway, people exceed the speed limit, no doubt. So I think this would be a major improvement for the entire area. So I do believe that we comply with the Sun Valley Area Plan, the master plan, code. We've addressed all the neighborhood issues and concerns, and I appreciate your support on this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioners, I'll ask you to withhold your questions. This is a public hearing item. Do we have any public hearing on this agenda item?
I do have public comment in chambers. Mark Newman, if you could please state your first and last name for the record.
Good evening, Commissioners. For the record, Mark Newman. I am on the board for our HOA, and November 16th, we were having a big meeting on or raising our money on our dues. So there was nobody at the November 16th. I was there at that night with them. But there was about 300 people at the board meeting at the HOA. And for your record, to the west is Highland Ranch, to the south is Highland Ranch. Wow. I have no idea where Stone Canyon is in her report. And we had gone over numerous things, and Mr. Crater has been very good with working with our community and getting that school zone in, because we're worried about the kids crossing Highland Ranch from the phase one in. And originally when phase one was approved at midnight at Highland Ranch, there was going to be a right in and a right out for the Highland Village phase one. Well, the pork chop intersection got removed, and now it's going to be a four-way, and it's been numerous discussions about a stoplight being put in there, because if any of you go out Highland Ranch Road, that is a very busy road. Now you're going to have people trying to make rights, lefts going forward, and that really needs to have the stoplight put in at that intersection. And everything else Mr. Crater has gone over has been well accepted by our HOA, by the Sun Valley Citizens Advisory Board, and by the GID, which I sit on all three of them. I've just been elected to the GID. I get sworn in on the 20th. I'm also on the Senior Services Citizens Advisory Board. So I appreciate your help, and I know what you guys all go through. But our big thing was from the chair she's sick tonight, was asked that those stipulations of the school zone and that intersection and the money that is generated from that goes to the parks be given to Sun Valley, and that be written in as well, that if anything has happened to him or he sells the property, that it stays there. Thank you, guys. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
I have no further public comment in chambers.
I have no hands raised on Zoom, no further public comment.
Thank you. We'll close public comment and bring it back to the board for questions. Commissioners? Okay, seeing none, you have your motions in your packet. They are page 2, and then the variance motion again is pulled out on page 16. Commissioner Flick.
Doing the motion on page 15.
For the variance? For the variance?
Okay. I move that after giving reasonable consideration to the information contained in the staff report and information received during the public hearing, the Washoe County Planning Commission approved tentative subdivision map case number WTM 22-004 for Highland Village 2, with the conditions included as Exhibit A to this matter, having made all 10 findings in accordance with Washoe County Code Section 110.608.25.
Is there a second?
For the record, was there an additional engineering condition?
There's an amended, so if you
Yes.
say amended conditions.
Amended condition.
Do you want me to do the variance?
Just you could add to your, you could add to your motion to include the amended conditions from
Oh.
engineering.
And to include the amended conditions to the motion.
From engineering. Two, yeah, condition 2SS.
To what?
2SS.
2SS, okay. To add condition 2SS to the motion.
This is Rob. For the record, I'll second it.
And this is the variance motion right now. It's not the tentative subdivision map. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And then on page 2, we have the tentative subdivision map motion. It says it's on page 15, but I see the, go ahead.
Was for the
For
tentative.
both? Okay.
No, his was for the tentative subdivision map.
Okay.
And then he has not, no one has made a motion for the
For the
variance
variance.
yet. Okay.
All right.
Commissioner Lazareski.
Thank you.
I move that, after giving reasoned consideration to the information contained in the staff report and information received during the public hearing, the Washoe County Planning Commission approve variance case number WPVA R22-0003 for Highland Village Phase 2 with the conditions of approval included in Exhibit A for this matter, having made all 4 required findings in accordance with the Washoe County Development Code, Section 110.804.25.
Thank you. Is there a second to that motion?
This is Rob. For the record, I'll second
Okay.
it.
It's been, is there any discussion on the motion? It's been moved by Commissioner Lazareski and Commissioner Pierce, seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Yes, it's been requested that we take a, let's say, a 10-minute break. So we're in recess for 10 minutes.
Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
We are now at the public hearing item for what is now 9B, Development Code Amendment, Cannabis Consumption Lounges. Secretary Lloyd.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This next item is item 9A, Development Code Amendment, case number WDCA 220003 for the cannabis consumption lounges. For hearing, discussion, and possible action to approve a resolution to amend Washoe County Code, Chapter 110 at Articles 302, 304, 410, and 410 to create necessary code language to facilitate the Board of County Commissioners' policy direction regarding cannabis consumption lounges as provided during its regular meeting of September 20th, 2022. The ordinance will amend Article 302 by adding new uses to Table 110-302-053 to allow retail and independent cannabis consumption lounges. 2 is to Article 304 by adding use definitions to retail and independent cannabis consumption lounges. And 3, Article 410, parking and loading, by adding parking standards to Table 110-410-10.3 for retail and independent cannabis consumption lounges and all matters necessarily connected therewith and pertaining thereto. The Planning Commission may recommend approval of the proposed ordinance as submitted, recommend approval with modifications based on input and discussion at the public hearing, or recommend denial. Any material modifications that exceed the scope of the amendments being considered at this hearing may require continuation of the hearing for possible action at a future meeting. If approval is recommended, the Planning Commission is asked to authorize the chair to sign a resolution to that effect. Now, representing Washoe County in this matter is Planning Manager Chad Geisinger.
And before Chad starts, are there any disclosures by commissioners of ethics or ex parte communications? Thank you.
Good afternoon, Planning Commissioners. For you today, I see there's a lot of new faces here since the last time I presented to the Planning Commission, so pleased to meet you. Trevor has adequately described this item. Again, I'm Chad Giesinger, Planning Manager for the Planning and Building Program. I'm the other Planning Manager. My main areas of focus are the business license program and code enforcement, also a park planner underneath me, but it's the business license side as to why I'm really presenting these amendments. I've already had that introduction, but yes, the subject today is to adopt amendments to Chapter 110. There are amendments that would be required to Chapter 25 as well, but that is not before the board today. And I'm going to be a little bit heavy on the background in this presentation, so please bear with me. And that is because I know the Planning Commission probably hasn't had a lot of exposure to this issue. These amendments were initiated by the Board of County Commissioners, and so that's why it's coming straight to you rather than starting out with initiation. So by way of background, ever since legalization of first medical and then after that adult use, I'll refer to as recreational cannabis. It's called marijuana previously. Now the new state law refers to all marijuana references as cannabis. Ever since that legalization occurred, the issue of consumption has been debated. And the reason for that is because consumption has been allowed only in private homes or on private property. And there are members of the community, such as out-of-state visitors or residents who live in apartment buildings, for example, that cannot avail themselves of the legal use. And so that's why consumption has been debated during almost every legislative session since legalization. So finally, in 2021 legislative session, a bill got across the finish line. AB 341 was passed to address both consumption and social equity issues, which also came up during that session. So AB 341 authorized the licensure and regulation of consumption lounges to be legal in the state, and it also directed a new board called the Cannabis Compliance Board to adopt implementing regulations, including those social equity provisions I just mentioned. Prior to the creation of the Cannabis Compliance Board, the Department of Taxation largely took the biggest role in regulating cannabis. It was mentioned in public comment, and that's true. Local governments are not required to allow consumption lounges, so this is a may, not a shall piece of legislation. And the local regulations can be more restrictive, as with most state laws, but not less. So what was in the final regulations that the Cannabis Compliance Board adopted back in June 28th? They spent a little over a year working on these and holding many workshops with industry and the public. This is where they came down. They're pretty specific, and most of the implementing regulations for cannabis lounges are established by the state, and that's why the amendments before you today are basically just enabling the use and not really addressing, the operational elements. And so, as you can see here, the location was addressed. Product procurement and storage methods, that's already in the industry. There's already many standards around that. But the employee training and consumer education is going to be more important with on-site consumption, which is obviously banned right now at dispensaries. Product types and serving sizes. So in that arena, if a consumption lounge were to be approved, they have limits on the amount, the quantities that can be consumed at any given time by a given individual within the lounge. There is extensive indoor air quality and ventilation standards. Consumption areas cannot be visible from public. There's health standards for any food preparation and service that may occur in conjunction with the lounge. And then there's a section for incident reporting and impaired driving mitigation. So every lounge is going to be required to submit a impaired driving mitigation plan to the state. And if there are known instances of increased impaired driving, the regulations do enable local law enforcement to shut down a lounge for a period of 72 hours while they address and make changes to their policies, for example. So this is just the highlights. There's lots of nuts and bolts behind this. And then finally, the criteria for issuing license to the independent consumption lounges, which I will explain here shortly. So as been mentioned, at the September 20th meeting, the board did provide direction to staff. So after the late June adoption of the final regs, the following month, staff did receive direction from the manager's office that there was a desire for staff to come and obtain direction from the board regarding whether or not we're going to allow cannabis consumption lounges in the unincorporated area, whether we're going to allow both types of lounges, the retail and the independent, or one or the other, whether or not the board did want to be more restrictive than the NRS concerning the location and number, and potentially allow outdoor consumption areas, which the regs were essentially silent on, except for one section in the final regs does address if a local government does decide to allow an outdoor lounge, it can't be visible from a public right-of-way. But that's basically the only guidance the state has adopted in that area. So after receiving that direction, staff got busy preparing a staff report for possible initiation. That occurred at the October 11th, 2022 BCC meeting. At that meeting, the board voted to basically implement what they had told us on September 20th. They initiated amendments to Chapter 25, which is the business license code, which is where most of the operational parameters are, the application requirements, things of that nature. Amend Chapter 110 so that it would enable the use to occur, and then update all matters necessarily connected therewith. And basically, that's cleaning up language like changing marijuana to cannabis, changing references to NRS. It used to be NRS 453, now it's 678, that kind of thing. So after that initiation, we got to work drafting the changes, the actual language for Chapter 110, basically amending the Article 302, as was mentioned in the opening description, creating use definitions in 304. And just wanted to point out, what's before you tonight is just Chapter 110. The Planning Commission, recommends by resolution to the board, or denial, if that's the case. And the County Commission will adopt the necessary amendments to Chapter 25 at the first and second readings. So, retail consumption lounges, how do they work? What are they? They must be affiliated with an existing licensed adult use medical dispensary, which means that the existing license holder for that dispensary is automatically going to be the applicant should they choose to go down the consumption lounge route. So per the NRS regulations that were adopted, the total number of lounges allowed by jurisdiction is going to be limited to the current amount of retail dispensaries, which in the unincorporated area, there's currently 6 operating. And then as far as the actual site development, the lounge has to be materially attached to, so they have to build, a new building that's attached to the existing dispensary, or they have to build a new building on the same property, or on a property that's in common ownership and well, not common ownership, but shares a common property line, but not like across the street. So a little more detail on where those existing dispensaries are, because this is theoretically where a retail lounge would be located in any one of these 6 dispensaries. There's working from top to bottom, there's one in Spanish Springs in the Save Mart Shopping Center. There's one in Lemon Valley, just off the highway there near the AutoZone. There's 2 in Sun Valley, one kind of on the north end of Sun Valley Boulevard, one towards the south end by Hobie's. There's one in Washoe Valley, in Old Washoe City, and then there's one in Tahoe up in Incline Village. So just a little more detail on those specific locations. As you can see, they range all over the board. In Sun Valley, for example, the one in the north there is on a fairly small lot, pretty constrained. It's in an old bank, and the one below is in more of a strip mall situation. It's actually the smaller building you see there in that picture. Up in Tahoe, of course, all the parcels are very small up there, so you can see that's a very small property. The parking is limited there. And then Lemon Valley, a little bit bigger area there. Spanish Springs, pretty constrained as well. And then in Washoe Valley, you have probably the largest parcel, the most available area there for expansion. So independent consumption lounges, they're the opposite of the retail lounges, more or less. They're going to be standalone and in a location not associated with a dispensary, so completely new independent use, potentially new building. They are also limited to the number of retail lounges. So again, that would be 6 potentially for the unincorporated area. But in the first application round, the state's going to limit the number of lounge licenses, the prospective licenses, to 20 total statewide. And 50% of those have to be awarded to a social equity applicant. What that means is basically underserved population, minority populations, and neighborhoods with higher than normal rates of past convictions for marijuana offenses. And then they have a complicated scoring system that they use to select qualified applicants via a random number generator. So the first round of licensing opened this fall. So that's probably part of the reason why this is coming quickly at you quickly. For a 2-week period there, the CCB received a total of 99 applications statewide, and actually most of those were for independent lounges for some reason, not sure why. And then on November 30th, the state did select their applicants and awarded a total of 40 out of those 99 prospective licenses, 20 of which are independent, 20 of which are retail. And of course, of the 20 independent, 10 were social equity. There was only 1 lounge license awarded in all of Washoe County. It was to the dispensary in Washoe Valley. And all of the independent lounge licenses were awarded to the Southern Nevada area. Backing up on this, though, I will point out there is the possibility for more application rounds. So even though there was just that one and no independents selected this time around, it is possible that in the future there could be more application windows. They would likely be once a year, probably for the same amount of time. It's my understanding that the current legislation has to be amended to enable that in this next legislature. But the possibility is always there that the legislature is going to open up more licenses to be allocated. So what are the existing regulations? As you're probably aware, these uses have been around for a while. Here are the current marijuana establishment uses. We're now going to call cannabis establishments. And the zoning designations they're allowed in, as you can see, in the general commercial and industrial zones, every type of establishment is allowed. And then when you look at the retail dispensaries, it only says medical on this because this is out of date, our code's out of date. It is allowed in the additional zones of neighborhood commercial and tourist commercial. And then, as I mentioned, Chapter 25 contains all of the operational parameters and how you apply for a license and those kinds of things. And right now, it prohibits on-site consumption, obviously, so that would need to be changed. So what are the proposed amendments? So amending the use table that you just saw and adding to it new uses that would be the retail and independent cannabis consumption lounges. Go along with that, every time you create a new use in the use table, you need to define that use. And so that's contained in Article 304. So we create new use definitions in that area. And then we need to address parking and loading standards for any new commercial floor area space that's added as part of one of these lounges. So we're amending that article. Landscaping doesn't need to be amended because it's already a standard 20% for commercial projects. So they would just have to add landscaping per that section of code and then the cleanup items. So what does that actually look like? Here's what it looks like when you insert those uses, again, changing everything referencing marijuana to cannabis. And then outlined in yellow there is are the new uses. And if you'll see there, we broke out the retail and the independents to have an outdoor component versus just one with that's just indoor. We decided to do this just to make it a little cleaner if either the Planning Commission or the BCC decided, you know what, we don't think outdoor is the way to go. It would be easier for us to just remove that use than have to go back and rewrite the definitions and everything. So that's why we're taking this approach. And then in terms of which regulatory zones these uses would be allowed, we're essentially mirroring what was in the previous what was allowed previously, but adding in tourist commercial and neighborhood commercial, but not for the outdoor lounge components, only allowing the outdoor lounges in the other 3 zones. So that's what we're proposing currently to the PC. Here are the use definitions that we've developed. This is more or less essentially straight out of state law, with the exception of number 7 there. That's been created by staff since the state law is more or less silent on outdoor lounges. Since I wrote this section, we have met with the health district, and they have indicated that they will not be enforcing necessarily odor for outdoor facilities, and that the CCB has agreed to take responsibility for the indoor enforcement. So that's a little bit of an open question at the moment. So I'll have to remove the health district from that and just say, according to Chapter 25 and what we put in there on that. Independent the independent lounges, basically the same thing, just referencing the independent lounge definition, that it's not attached or affiliated with a retail dispensary. It's a standalone facility, and then basically the same language for the outdoor component. Here's what staff proposing as far as parking standards, basically mirroring what's required already for a retail dispensary. This is in the middle of a range between, if you look at, say, packaged liquor sales, packaged liquor requires 10 spaces. We went in between that when we adopted the original marijuana regulations. We're just going to continue that concept. It seems like it's been working, with the caveat that if a dispensary were to convert the inside of an existing dispensary and not create additional floor area, that would be exempted from any new parking, right? Because it's the same shell of the building. So, although this is an expedited timeline, staff was able to hold an all-cab workshop, as we typically do with all development code amendments. We don't go out to every single cab individually. That just wouldn't be feasible. So we usually hold an all-cab meeting here at the county, and that's what occurred on November 7th, 2022. It was held here in the chambers, and it was advertised to all of the cabs. Like I mentioned, we have met with the health district since that workshop, actually, and have learned that they had already been meeting with the CCB and have learned that the CCB will enforce those very stringent indoor air quality regulations that they developed through those NCCR regulations. And then we have provided the amendments to the sheriff's office and have not received any specific comments or recommendations or concerns to date. So what did we hear from the cab at the cab workshop? Here's a summary of that input. I'd say the number one thing was concerns about impaired driving, or the potential for increased impaired driving. Concerns over then having to spend additional enforcement resources to address that. Specific opposition to dispensary in Incline Village. Concerns about the speed of adoption. Concerns about smoking areas and food together. Although I will note in the NCCR regulation, it does prohibit all tobacco and alcohol use in conjunction with any consumption lounge, just so you know. And then there was a question about whether standard OSHA regulations would apply to workers within these lounges and how that would work. And then from the industry, there were concerns that our amendments aren't contemplating the full range of uses that could be paired with a consumption lounge. So, for example, live entertainment, more sophisticated food pairings, infused food, that kind of stuff, or even having weddings and events or birthday parties. So right now, that's not currently being considered. That would likely go more, I mean, some of that might go into Chapter 110, but some of it might go into Chapter 25 as well. For example, live entertainment, that's actually in Chapter 30, which is gaming and liquor. And we issue what's called a cabaret license, and that's what allows live entertainment in conjunction with liquor. So you'd kind of basically take the same approach, theoretically, to a cannabis lounge. So what is the adoption timeline? Well, it's tonight for the PC. And then the first reading would be scheduled for January 10th if the amendments were to pass the PC tonight and be recommended for approval. That would be the first reading, and then second reading would follow shortly thereafter on the 24th of January. Staff is recommending approval of the proposed amendments. The details are provided to you in attachment A1. Here are the findings that the Planning Commission is required to make in order to approve a development code amendment. I will note you only have to make one of these findings, and from staff's perspective, number 3 would be the most relevant, responses to change conditions, which would be the new state law. And this is a possible motion for your consideration. That is on page 7 of your staff report, if you want to drill in on that. And with that, thank you very much. And I can take questions now or wait for after.
We'll take public comment and then we'll ask questions of staff.
Great, sounds good. Thanks.
So we're to public comment. Do we have any public comment requests in chambers?
In chambers, I have Jay Collins, followed by Cliff Lowe.
My name is Jay Collins. I'm a 20-year resident of Washoe Valley, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak to you folks. I want to go back to September 20th, when the county commissioners' first item on their agenda was about 2 social services groups who, in specific, were working with people with drug and alcohol problems. One, women with children, and other individuals. The 2 county commissioners, Commissioner Young and Commissioner Lucy, waxed on and on about how wonderful these groups were, and I agree with that. What they went on to say is these groups are so successful and so busy, they're going to have to increase their campus size and build new facilities. And this was done with absolutely no linkage or feeling of cause and effect to why they have to increase the size of their facilities, which is what I'll speak to last. Also, Commissioner Lucy called up a sheriff's deputy to speak about the issue of impaired driving. And in the case of a lounge, especially where I live in Washoe Valley, there is no public transportation. So anyone who leaves that lounge is going to leave in a car. And unless they have a designated driver, they're probably going to be driving impaired. The sheriff said, yes, we can test people for that, just like an alcohol test. But the alcohol test, you get a result immediately, and they can incarcerate somebody. The test for anything else takes 10 days to be lab checked. So I got that information from the sheriff after the meeting. Lucy did not ask about that information. So I'm wondering why this accelerated process to get this through when, unfortunately, the current operation in Washoe Valley has been impacting my air quality at where I live when they cultivate. Yet we're very involved in the air quality inside the lounges. I think we have moved too fast. I don't think there's any reason to be doing this. And I go back to what I said in the beginning. Are we just trying to create more candidates for those social services programs?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cliff Lowe, followed by William Naylor.
Hope you folks aren't getting tired of hearing from me. For the record, Cliff Lowe, resident of unincorporated Washoe County. And I would mention that, as you know, I spoke earlier, seeking a denial on your part of the changes to the code that are being presented tonight. Certainly, my motivation is not to create more work for those employees of the county. Like most every other place in the world, and certainly in our country these days, they're probably short-staffed and struggling just to keep up. Earlier in the meeting, under a different agenda item, I heard one or two commissioners make reference to doing things right. And that takes me to one of my book of platitudes, which is, there never seems to be time to do something right, but there always ends up being time to do it twice. Except in this case, there won't be a second go around. There's only going to be one chance to get this and do it right. So, as it says in the staff report, due to the expedited adoption timeline directed by the board, as I brought to your attention earlier, I find no direction by the Board of County Commissioners to do this on an expedited basis. There's nothing in the minutes from those meetings that are cited here. I did a search of the minutes of the meeting subsequent and the agenda of the meetings after the meetings that were cited in here. And I submit to you the reason that I cannot find any direction, official direction by the board to expedite this is because it doesn't exist. So you are not being pressed by the board to my findings that you need to expedite this process. And then they say no harm, no foul. Well, there is harm. Goes on. It was not possible for staff to conduct extensive public and agency outreach regarding the proposed amendments. And I'm going to run out of time again. Good for you, probably. Only 11 people attended the quick cab meeting. You folks build your schedules probably because you know there's going to be a meeting on the first Tuesday of the month. The cab people also probably can't drop what they're doing and show up at a meeting that's hastily called. And the same with the public. So there was a relatively low turnout. There's harm from that. There hasn't been proper input. This expedited process has caused harm. Even the cannabis industry expressed, as is mentioned here in the staff report, concerns from a cannabis industry representative that the current ordinance approach had not considered the full range of potential business models. Its expedited adoption timeline may not allow for robust industry input. It's being rushed. It's even harming the cannabis industry. The health district says that they have been meeting and coordinating with the CCB. They didn't finish their process. Don't rush this. Push it back and push it back and insist the direction to them is that they do it and do it right and get the full input from.
Thank you.
Next, we have William Naylor, followed by Thomas Tizano.
Good evening. For the record, William Naylor. This item reflects government at its absolute worst. That's all I can say. It's on an expedited schedule. Cliff read the quote. I'll read it again. Due to the expedited adoption timeline directed by the board, it was not possible for staff to conduct extensive public and agency outreach regarding the proposed amendments. Okay, lack of citizen input. There was very little outreach. We had a mega cab, 14 people. In all of Washoe County, 14 people. Lack of department coordination. You noticed in the staff report there were no letters from any of the departments, either in the county or the state, that should be associated with this or involved with this project. For example, no update of driving regulations. Here's a quote from Chad. Basically says, there's no effort on staff's part to really dive into the driving part because there's really no way to address it from my perspective at the moment based on what we've heard so far. No update to driving while impaired. Okay. No word back from the sheriff. He pointed that out. No formal written health response. One of the things that concerns the people in Washoe Valley, we have no municipal septic service. What do you do with the wastewater? The reg says you wash all the utensils, you keep everything really clean, and then all the stuff goes down the sink or down the toilet from the patrons. Where does that go? Does it get dumped, cannabis water get dumped back into the ground table for people who are on wells down there to drink and be exposed to? That should be included in this reg before it's approved, definitely. Truckee Meadows Fire and Rescue, as you probably know, most of Washoe County depends on Truckee Meadows Fire for their EMS service. Can they handle this? Are they educated to handle these kinds of medical emergencies that this could create if approved? Overall, input from departments and citizens and data to support this item are incomplete on every level. You can't make findings if you have no information. This is very important code change, requires full due process in order to make an informed decision. I'm saying, please deny this. He mentioned finding 3. He said that's the most likely one you could find. You only have to find 1 for some reason. It seems like you should make them all, but obviously public safety is an issue. Finding 3, basically, that's legislation that says you can create these things, but you don't have to create these things. There's nothing that says that finding forces you to do it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We now have Thomas Tizano, followed by Maureen Collins.
Good evening. My name is Thomas Tizano. I live in Washoe Valley. Been out there for 15 years. Live a couple of 100 yards from Saul, the dispensary we're talking about. And I'm asking you to deny their possible license approval. I'm concerned for my safety, my family's safety, my neighbor's safety, with the possibility of a lot more impaired drivers. We're about halfway between Reno and Carson City. So that means from Carson City, you got to drive about 10 miles. It's about 8 miles to Reno. And then depending on where you're going into Reno, it's even farther. So what's the county going to do to address the fact that there's going to be a lot of people, especially if they start holding parties out there at Saul like they planned on doing, a lot of impaired drivers. That's the only way they're going to get out there. They're going to have to drive out there. There's no bus out there. There's no other means of transportation other than a car or walk. Walking would be fine with me if they were stoned. But driving, I'm not okay with that. And I don't think any of the people that live in Washoe Valley are okay with that. And you need to, I think, listen to our concerns. And also, I would like to ask why the public in Washoe Valley has not been notified. I found out about this afternoon. So that's why I don't have a whole lot to say. Didn't prepare a lot. But give us some notice so more people that live out there and from the surrounding community can come out and address their concerns over this possible licensing change to allow these recreational lounges. So that's all I have to say. Thank you for listening. And I hope you deny this request.
Thank you.
Thank you. We now have Maureen Collins, followed by Marilyn Naylor.
Hi, my name is Maureen Collins. I live in Washoe Valley, and I've lived there for 20 years. I agree with my neighbors who have spoken up here. I would also ask for you to deny this. I can't understand why it's being rushed through and why we haven't been, involved in this. We live in an area that's 95% residential. Our commercial is only limited to those businesses that line either side of Old 395 that goes through Washoe Valley. And we have been impacted negatively by Soul that has been out there because they have not met the air quality control codes. You have to understand the growing season of marijuana, almost no emissions until a few weeks before the harvest. And then during the harvest and after the harvest, during the drying process, it is almost unbearable out there. I open up my back door, my entire home is permeated, and Sol's reason is because they can't afford to get the filtration equipment that is needed to have this so that they're not impacting the neighbors. And we have complained about it over a period of 4 years. We've begged people to come out there. They did one testing and they did a report and said it was fine. Well, if it's during those other times, it is fine. So they promised to be a good neighbor of ours, you know, if they were going to be in Washoe Valley, and that hasn't proved to be true. They don't follow the air quality codes, and we need some help out there about that. They place their band. They have a band that they place on an elevated deck that blasts sound throughout the valley, I guess to alert the people who are driving through the valley to stop. And the noise control is just, you know, it's just not being a good neighbor. But also, people feel in our valley that no one listens to us, or no one asks our opinion, or no one tries to get our opinion and notify us. And I was just notified this morning that this meeting was going to happen. So I'm not all that prepared as well, but I would ask you to please deny on the fact that this needs to be slowed down. People need to take their time to make this important decision. Thank you.
Thank you.
We now have Marilyn Naylor, followed by Ed Alexander.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Marilyn Naylor. I'm a 40-year resident of Washoe County. Thank you for this opportunity to speak on this agenda item. Please do not recommend approval of the proposed changes to the ordinances that would have a huge impact on the health, welfare, and safety of the public without first giving every citizen in unincorporated Washoe County an opportunity to voice their opinion at a CAB meeting or an online survey. Washoe County could follow the lead of the City of Reno and their prudent decision to hold public meetings, survey citizens online seeking their feedback before approving lounges, before authorizing changes to development codes. We can all still take the City of Reno survey to be completed by Friday, December 9th. Citizens do receive verification of their submissions, and all feedback from everywhere will be presented to the Reno City Council on January 25th. The hope would be that they would join our neighboring counties and Carson City supervisors and not allow cannabis lounges at all. Washoe County Code should not be changed without giving citizens complete information and an opportunity to provide feedback. I would like to hear from all of our community service organizations. I'd like to know their feelings also. Please do not recommend approval of the proposed changes. Please propose clear avenues for all citizen voices to be heard. And thank you very much and happy holidays.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Ed Alexander, followed by John Strickland.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Ed Alexander. I'm the owner of Soul Cannabis. I want to take a minute to hopefully remind all of the commissioners that prior to us going through a very extensive application process with the state of Nevada, we came before the BCC to seek guidance on the direction that Washoe County wanted to go as it related to lounges. We were given the indication by the BCC that the intention of Washoe County was to allow for lounges. We went through a very extensive process with the state of Nevada and were selected as a prime applicant for a lounge after essentially spending $100,000 on a non-refundable application fee. What we're talking about here this evening is amending code to include allowable uses, again, which we've been given the indication that the county, intends on moving forward. In listening to the concerns of the community and in talking with emergency services, this is the first step in identifying how we address inebriated driving, how we address the safety concerns associated with facilities like this. We've got 5 taverns in Washoe Valley. I'm not hearing any concern about folks leaving bars that are inebriated. As the proprietor of the facility, it's going to be on us to ensure that folks don't leave in inebriated fashion. In talking with staff, we want to make sure that as the industry continues to develop, right now we're the 4th largest industry in the state of Nevada. Whether you agree with cannabis or don't agree with cannabis, the voice of the people has been heard repeatedly through the legislative process, through continuing to vote. And all I would ask the Planning Commission tonight is to remember what you're being asked to approve is amendment of the tables for allowable uses. The BCC's already given direction to staff that the intention is to move forward with these. Now we just need to make sure that we implement responsible regulatory language so that the industry can be overseen and operate in a commonsensical, responsible way. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
We now have John Strickland, followed by Mark Newman.
Hi, I'm John Strickland, developing a property down in Washoe. I'm actually a loyal customer to Sol. I have nothing against Sol. However, this is the first I heard of it, and my neighbors told me about it. My biggest concern is the driving. There were several deaths some years ago right along that stretch. I don't know where these other taverns are. I would probably notice them. But I just want to say I agree with all the opposing arguments. And we'll leave it at there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lastly, I have Mark Newman.
Good evening again. Mark Newman for the record. As far as it goes, I am on the Sun Valley Citizens Advisory Board. And if you notice this thing, there's 2 lounges in Sun Valley, hardly any place else. Okay? When the notification came, it was sent to us on our email like days before. Like you said, how many cabs are in Washoe County and how many showed up because of the lack of notice and information and time? We couldn't even talk to the people of our community as cab members of what they wanted to bring to this meeting. It was all hastily done. And unfortunately, just like Chocolate Drive, when you all voted against putting apartments in Sun Valley, it goes to Washoe County Commissioners and it's overruled and thrown out. Whatever you guys decide, unfortunately, on the cab myself, knowing what happens once it goes to the commission, vote your conscience. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment in chambers?
I have no further public comment in chambers.
Do we have public comment on Zoom?
I have no hands raised on Zoom. Oh, just a moment. I have Corey Solferino. Corey, please unmute and state your name. Go ahead.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Corey Solfrino for the record, representing the Washoe County Sheriff's Office. I just wanted to take this opportunity to clear up a couple of the comments that has been made this evening. Obviously, the biggest concern of the Washoe County Sheriff's Office and Sheriff Darren Balaam is that of the public safety. The men and women of the Washoe County Sheriff's Office every night go on their shifts, work their beats to combat our freeways and our towns and our areas of impaired drivers. I want to get over the notion that marijuana consumption is a new phenomenon. We've been training our officers in impairment detection since the get-go. In 2015, we added the A-RIDE program. It's the Advanced Roadside Impaired Driving Evaluation. There's a series of tests, a battery of FSTs that officers are trained in to detect impairment. Not alcohol, not marijuana, not cocaine, not methamphetamine, not pills, impairment. It's not their job to determine what the level of that impairment is. It's just whether or not they can safely operate a motor vehicle. And if they're unable to do so, that gives us the probable cause that we need to make an arrest and get that person off the streets. Whether or not they come back at an impaired level later down the road, as the conviction is concerned, is up to the courts and is up to the toxicology exams when those battery of tests are completed. Our officers are trained in impairment and to keep our roadways safe, and we will continue to do so. I know this is a very, very passionate topic. I happen to be working on the Sheriff's Office Government Affairs team and have been working in Carson City for the last 3 regular sessions and 3 special sessions, talking with legislators, talking with county commissioners. Chad and I have sat on a board for the better part of the last 8 years, talking about the development of code locally for cannabis consumption, from the medicinal piece to the recreational piece and now the consumption piece. While I won't get into the politics behind those decisions, our representation as the Sheriff's Office is public safety. So however the board decides to move with this progression, we are ready, willing, and able to ensure that the public safety is there. I do share the residents of Washoe Valley's concerns about, and it's not just the residents of Washoe Valley, but it's all over the county. We do not have a mass transit public option for people to go to and from these locations. So we would encourage to use responsibly, like we do with alcohol consumption, to ride share, to have designated drivers, because the fact of the matter is there simply isn't a mass transit option for these different locations. But we hope that people use good judgment. We hope that they use the same terminologies and campaigns that the alcohol industry does with use responsibly and consume responsibly. So I'm happy to entertain any questions that you may have, but I just wanted to get a couple things on the record this evening while we're waiting for this agenda item. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comment?
I have no more hands raised on Zoom. We have no more public comment.
Thank you. So I'm closing public comment and bringing it back to the board for questions. While you're thinking about your questions, as with anything that we're looking at, what we have before us is a development code amendment. And that's what our decisions are based on. And I did talk with council regarding the timetable for first and second readings, which will happen on opposite ends of the seated commission. So the first reading will very likely happen with the existing commission, correct? We think? That's my understanding. Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm thinking about the answering that question. It really depends on the time frame. Yes, if
I'm
before
just referring to Chad's timeframe. So
correct, based on that time frame, yes, that's my understanding. The first reading would happen with the current commission. The second reading would likely happen with the incoming commission.
yeah, the new seated commission. Okay. Questions from commissioners? Commissioner.
Commissioner Lazareski for the record. A question for staff. This is a general code amendment, but I feel like a lot of the public comment we've received are specific to the specific application that the state Cannabis Advisory Board approved to move forward. Does adopting this regulatory framework for allowing cannabis consumption lounges in the county in any way require you guys as staff to then issue that license just because the state board has identified that business for moving forward in the process?
Thank you for your question. So kind of two parts there. If the amendments as proposed are adopted tonight, they will apply to the entire county, so not just Washoe Valley. So that's answer number one. And the board was actually very adamant about that, and that was why we did ask for direction on whether or not they wanted to further restrict locations geographically or by number, and they said absolutely not, at least the three that voted for it. The other issue of are we compelled to approve the business license that they would submit should these amendments go forward? No, not necessarily. However, it would be a by right use, meaning that it's not a discretionary use, meaning that if it met all of the technical aspects of the code, so everything that's required for the application is submitted, they meet all the state regulations as prescribed, for air quality and that thing. All of the agencies sign off on it. It would be routed just like all the existing marijuana establishments that were approved. They all went through an extensive review at the business license stage. They had to submit security plans, all that kind of stuff. So assuming an applicant met all of those criteria, then yes, the business license would be issued. It's not a discretionary process. Yeah.
Additionally, on code enforcement, the Washoe County Air Board has said that they won't be the agency enforcing. I guess what information do we have about the responsiveness of the state CAB in terms of addressing issues like odor that have been brought up?
Right, so that's also two different issues. So the odor part of it that was brought up was in regard to the cultivation facility that's already operating out there. So depending on how this goes, there could be an odor component if there were an outdoor lounge, but we're not anticipating an odor issue for indoor lounges because it's going to be so strictly regulated and contained within the facility. We do have representatives here from the health district tonight. They graciously agreed to attend and answer some questions that may arise. It's my understanding that they have been coordinating with the CCB and meeting with them because they did have concerns about sending their staff in for enforcing, and that the CCB did agree to take that lead, to take that responsibility. But if I misstated anything, yep, you're good. Okay, so yeah, that's where that's landed basically. And then the state doesn't have any regulations right now for an outdoor lounge. An outdoor consumption lounge, so those would have to be created by the county.
Okay, in having read the state regulations on the indoor lounge, they are very detailed in the odor mitigation requirements. They don't specify the specific equipment to be installed or anything like that. So going forward, it's foreseeable that a situation could arise where a system was installed that was compliant in expectation, but then not in operation. What would be the enforcement mechanism if people do have odor, but it's the state that has to enforce?
Mm-hmm. Well, state really has a big hammer because they can take that license back if they're not complying with the requirements. But I don't know, did you have any thoughts on that, Erin, you wanted to add? Yeah.
Good evening. For the record, Erin Dixon, Director of Environmental Health Services with Washoe County Health District. Thank you for the opportunity to answer some questions. Unfortunately, I don't have everything very, very specific. As Chad stated, we have been meeting with the Cannabis Compliance Board, has been having public workshops regarding public health impacts. I'm going to say since the end of last session, right? And so we've been meeting with them very regularly. If they have agreed, since they have the same registered environmental health specialists as we do in our office, they have agreed to be the public health enforcement on these lounges. They are the experts when it comes to this, and That is one of the reasons that we have worked so closely with them on this. The workshops are still going on the regulations and what this would mean, and if there was an issue, I would absolutely anticipate that if there was odor complaints, the CCB, they've already agreed that they would be the ones that would be responding and enforcing those regulations. Did that help?
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
Commissioner Pierce, did you have any questions?
I wanted to ask one question along that line. As far as air circulation inside, I heard a comment about this lady said that when her doors are open and they're cultivating, she can smell it. And I can relate to that just driving down I-80 by the Nugget during certain times of the month. There's a smell, and it's strong, and it's coming into my car. Is there any mitigation or anything that these people are supposed to be doing?
So unfortunately, our director of our air quality management, who's the one that responded to those complaints, and they have a very strict regulations, and I'm happy to get those strict regulations to you. They are the ones that went out. I do not have the details of that investigation and report, but I can get you those air quality regulations.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Commissioner Phillips?
Thank you. This is for staff. Is this amendment absolutely necessary in order to be compliant with the state legislature?
As I mentioned in my presentation, the county is not required to allow cannabis consumption lounges.
I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, the amendments are necessary to respond to the initial board direction that staff has received. If they are to be allowed, then these amendments would need to be passed. Right.
Anything else? Commissioner Nelson? Commissioner Flick?
Yes. I'm ready to make a motion.
Well, I want to take comments first.
Okay. I have a couple questions. Number one, it's my understanding that marijuana is used for medical reasons. But what is to keep these lounges from letting anybody go in there and use marijuana just for the sake of using it?
Thank you for the question. Yeah, that is the idea. It's not going to be restricted just to medical.
Well,
yeah.
So we don't know.
Recreational use has been approved. Recreational use has been approved in Washoe County. It is no longer just medicinal use.
Correct. Yeah, and then the proposed amendments before you would allow.
So they would be allowed then?
Yeah.
Well, I have a real problem with the statement that the amendment will not adversely impact the public health, safety, and welfare. You can't tell me people that are high on marijuana are not going to impact innocent citizens. And for that reason, I wouldn't support any motion to move forward with this.
So,
And let the consequences fall where they fall.
thank you, Commissioner Flick. So to staff and then to council and then to the secretary, I just, want my fellow commissioners to note that I feel this is a really untenable position for this planning commission to be taking on because of the change in the county commission. We don't know what will happen with the second ordinance. And we're also putting our staff in an untenable position because if we deny, they have to go and appeal to our denial to the BCC because the applicant is Washoe County. And correct me if I'm wrong in any of my statements. And, irrespective of, driving impaired is, as the sheriff's officer alluded to, driving impaired is driving impaired. It doesn't matter what the substance is. And we have impaired people driving in our community. all the time. I'm putting, I'm not tipping my hand how I'm voting or not. I just want everyone to know that we have multitudes of impaired substances that people use on a regular basis and make poor decisions. So.
I have one more question for staff. Can you tell us why this was rushed, please?
I'm just operating on the direction that I've received, Commissioner.
I can't find anything in any minutes or anything on that either. But
I will
according
point
to
out, though, that I did ask the board for very specific direction when I took the item on September 20th, and many of the requests went unanswered. But the overall discussion was as soon as possible, bring these amendments back as soon as possible. So I was asked to create timelines of what could be possible, and I provided those to the manager's office, and this is the timeline I was told to pursue.
Commissioner Nelson.
So I guess my concern lies with it's going to be a split board, right? The board direction that you were given, that board is changing, and there's a reason why, whatever it may be, but the board is changing. So,
Madam Chair, I'd just like to reiterate that whether the Board of County Commissioners would ultimately vote yes or no on these amendments is not the question before the Planning Commission today.
Is the development code.
Right. Your job is to look at these development code amendments and then decide how you'd like to vote, whether you'd like to approve or deny based on the 4 findings that are listed in the development code, which is consistency with the master plan, promotes the purpose of the development code, response to change conditions, and no adverse effects. And I will just point out, in the development code, under findings, it says when making its recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners for approval, modification of amendment, or denial, the Planning Commission shall, at a minimum, make at least one of the following findings of fact. So if you ultimately vote to approve this, you need to make one of the findings of facts. If you ultimately vote to deny it, you also make one of the findings of facts, or the failure to make one of the findings of facts on here. So that's the appropriate consideration for this board, is based on the findings in the development code for a development code amendment.
As we've done with other things, is where we have to defend our decision based on the codes, the development code in front of us.
Madam Chair, also, just reading excerpts from the minutes from September 20th. On this item, Commissioner Chung wanted a timeline provided to staff for this item to be voted on, and wanted it done before January. And then Commissioner Lucy also asked that he didn't give a time frame, but he said he believed a draft presentation on potential regulations could be brought to the board soon.
Okay. Commissioner
Lazarus, a question for council. Under changed conditions, what changed conditions include the state laws that apply?
Yes.
Jen Gustafson for the record. Yeah, it says, the development code simply says, respond to changed conditions or further studies that have occurred since the development code was adopted by the Board of County Commissioners. So given the fact that there has been legislative changes, I believe that that would constitute changed conditions since the development code was amended.
Thank you.
Commissioner Pierce, did you have a question?
I just wanted to state that me personally, I've gone over these findings, and I understand that we only have to find one, but I'm having a hard time finding any personally. Okay. I can't find any.
So we'll entertain a motion. And then just so the board knows, I will ask for a roll call vote, and you have to indicate where you cannot find findings.
All right, I'm prepared to make a motion. I think that,
Page 7, I believe.
as a prelude to that motion, I'd just like to say I really do take to heart people's comments on this, and where I'm drawing my logic is that fundamentally what we're looking at in terms of personal consumption of an intoxicant that is allowed by law is pretty much in line with the kind of rules that we have on alcohol consumption in public places and in private establishments to support that consumption. And I really appreciate the sheriffs calling in to give their comments on their enforcement of driving while intoxicated rules, that they have the ability to enforce those rules regardless of whether or not there is a breathalyzer test available for the particular intoxicant. So I would make a motion that after giving reasoned consideration to the information contained in the staff report and information received during the public hearing, then the Washoe County Planning Commission recommended approval of WDCA 22-003 to amend the Washoe County Code, Chapter 110 Development Code, Articles 302, 304, and 410, as reflected in the proposed ordinance contained in Attachment A1. I further move to authorize the chair to sign the resolution contained in Exhibit A on behalf of the Planning Commission and to direct staff to present a report of this commission's recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners within 60 days of today's date. This recommendation for approval is based on the finding within Washoe County Code Section 110.818.15E, number 3, a response to change condition, in that the legal conditions within this state have changed to allow the legal consumption of recreational marijuana in consumption lounges.
Is there a second? Commissioner Nelson?
I'll second the motion, just because the state has made it legal and it's no different now than alcohol. So I do find finding number 3 as the only finding I can make.
Any other comments before we take a roll call vote? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote, please.
Sarah Savilicek?
I vote in favor of the motion with the response to change conditions. I want for the record to reflect that I feel that this is being rushed, and I have grave concerns about that compressed timeline.
Michael Flick?
I vote against the motion, and that approval of the motion will adversely affect the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of Washoe County.
Pat Phillips?
I vote against it for reason number 4, no adverse effects. I feel especially with the outdoor lounges, there is really no containment or regulations that would help. Bottom line, does this make things better or worse?
Rob Pierce?
I vote against it, and I can pretty much go against all these findings. First of all, consistency with the master plan. It says substantial compliance. That's considerable importance. I can't find that with this. With the number 2, promotes purpose of the development code. No adverse effects of public health, safety, or warfare, sorry. That's unknown at this time. There wasn't enough studies done. Number 3, it says to allow for a more desirable utilization. Well, the word desirable means wise. The land's already being utilized, so I can't find that one. And no adverse effects. It says policies and actions programs with a conservation element of the Washoe County Master Plan. I feel that there's more studies that are needed on that. It's not a good thing for the area. So no, negative.
Thank you.
And Francine Donchek is absent. DA Gustafson, I do have a question. So we have 3 yeas and 3 nays. How would we proceed?
There are 3 in favor of the motion, 3 against the motion, so the motion does not pass.
Thank you. We're on to Item 10, chair and commission items. Do we have any requests from commissioners for future agenda items? Commissioner Pierce.
I would like to see, and I don't know if this is the time to ask Trevor, you know how you did that report for us for the BOA on what the county commissioners overturned on all of our, can we have that for this board, please, going back at least a couple years?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Any other requests from commissioners? Request for information from staff. That kind of leads into Commissioner Pierce's, but yeah. And one thing that I'm sorry I neglected to check, but in the Highland Ranch, did we have the approved but not yet built map? I don't know, that's what I'm asking. I think it was, but just to remind the importance of having the
I'm
approved.
pretty sure I saw that, but
Okay.
yeah, sorry if it was excluded.
Okay. Exhibit C, so thank you.
Okay.
Any other requests for information from staff? Item 11, Director and Legal Counsel items. This is a non-action item. But
Jen Gustafson for the record. I do not have any information or updates to report to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Director?
Nothing to report on from Planning Commission items to the BCC, but I did want to introduce Brandon Roman. He's our newest staff member, and he's a terrific addition.
Yes, thank you. So we've already sort of copied, yeah, okay. And item 12, public comment. Do we have any public comment?
We do. We have William Naylor, followed by Cliff Lowe.
Again, for the record, William Naylor. I want to make a couple more comments on Envision Washoe 2040. By the way, thank you very much for your work tonight. I think your decisions were very well thought out and very accurate. Thank you. I also was quite amazed that there was no staff report provided, and I would suggest, maybe Mr. Lloyd can be listening also, that this not be done again, and that you be given a complete staff report with backup data to support the recommendation. I personally went to the website, went through all of those local surveys. It took me quite a while to do it. Obviously, I didn't record all the numbers and do the math to get the averages and all of that. Comment was made several times, well, they came out in every case. Yeah, they came out in every case because it was a question that was on the survey. It had to be answered every time. So that's why it came out in every case. They mentioned that they were information came from the cabs. The cabs weren't working sessions. The public basically had no input in them. They were presentations. So I would kind of put that at a lower level as far as providing any meaningful input. One of the things that I think they could do would be to expand on the 4 items that they came up with. And I kind of alluded to it in my conversation. For example, access to recreation, does that include bike paths? Does that include trails, trailheads? In other words, come back with a matrix that shows the general heading and then the subheadings that are under it that the public was asked about. And you can do that for resources. Do dark skies fall under there? The crosswalk table, just talked with Eric Young. He said he would never give it to me. This is a public record. We wanted to get that. When 70% of your area plan is stripped out and you're totally unaware that it's happened, what we wanted to do was look at that matrix and confirm that, yes, it's a good idea to move this to the development code. Yes, it's a good idea to eliminate that. We have a scenic byway now. We don't need language that's currently in the code. Yes, this should be strengthened. We're not doing it in a malicious manner. We want to be involved with the process. And we have not been involved with the process. The people that have been selected to be on these committees, the one from Washoe Valley is the drug dealer. He's the only one. If I look at the list of people on those committees, where's the Forest Service? Where's the BLM? Where's Nevada Land Conservancy? Where's the Audubon Society? Where are the people who really care about improving the standards in the valley rather than making money off them, so to speak? There's no citizen organizations like the Washoe Valley Alliance that I'm a part of, or the West Washoe Association. Those should be changed. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Cliff Lowe, followed by Mark Newman.
I'm making up for lost time, meetings that I haven't attended and spoke at by speaking seemingly every opportunity. For the record, Cliff Lowe, resident of unincorporated Washoe County. I'm pleased with the result, of course, that the motion did not carry for making the change to code for cannabis consumption lounges. And I would share with you, although this is water over the bridge, that even response to changed conditions is something that you don't necessarily have to find, because this is the proposed development code amendment responds. Does it mean any changes? Whatever would be brought and however they got there? No, the process has to be proper and the substance has to be proper, not just whatever they bring because the law has changed. But it has not passed. And yes, it was a difficult situation to find yourself in many regards, both with the changes in the county commission coming and otherwise. Misery loves company. So those of us, the relatively few of us that are paying attention or trying to pay attention to Envision Washoe 2040 are suffering from a degree of misery. And I heard some misery expressed here amongst you. And I think there's a lesson to be learned here by staff. It was alluded to by one of you, or more than one of you. Failure to be very transparent. Well, perceptions are people's reality. And if people perceive that the process is not transparent, it leads to resistance. And that's some of what staff, I think, met with from this board tonight. And getting materials that you need to speak to the morning of your meeting, I'll come out and say it if you didn't say it explicitly, that's awful. It's unreasonable to expect that you folks, whether you have part-time jobs, full-time jobs, or you're retired, it's unreasonable to expect that you're going to be able to have the time and digest and think about, maybe talk to your partner or whatever it is about these items and bounce it off to be able to discuss them intelligently tonight. You need to have these things in a reasonable amount of time. But we're feeling, I think those of us that I interact with, we are feeling, our perception is that the Envision Washoe 2040 process is anything but transparent to the public. There have been requests for information that have been stalled and then have been turned down. The website does not provide much information at all. And the input process, it says the Citizens Advisory Committee, the CAC, I hear references to TAC and CAC and everything. They haven't even met since June. In June, they didn't get to really, there was no action for them to take. So even that group is having very little input. Thank you. And thank you for doing your jobs.
Lastly, in chambers, we have Mark Newman.
Hello again, for the record, Mark Newman. As far as the Envisions 2040 go, I've been on our CAB. He's met with our CAB one time, really didn't ask a whole lot of questions, gave a presentation similar to what he did tonight, and said, go on the computer and fill out this survey. Being on the Senior Services Citizens Advisory Board for District 3, I go to all the different CAB meetings in Washoe County that I can attend to on my schedule. And the biggest complaint that is of every single CAB meeting, and I invite all of you to attend yours in your area, is the traffic. That was like fourth on the list. Traffic is the #1 biggest concern in Washoe County. And there was a lot of stuff on the Visions 2020 that was supposed to happen in the North Valleys area and the Sparks area. And that all got put aside because of all the big development going this way and that way. And still, Everything is reactive instead of proactive. So they just keep building, 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 and nothing's getting done because it's a reactive state that we're living under. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment in chambers?
I have no further public comment in chambers.
Do we have public comment online?
I have no hands raised. I have no further public comment.
Okay, I will close public comment, and we are adjourned.